Hello, my name is Joe Fricke, and welcome to the 16th episode of Movie Changeup, where every week two people go head to head pitching reboots to movies we all love and love to hate, but with a little added twist, because every week there are also new rules they must follow. One rule per movie, and you can't use a rule more than once. And today's special episode, because of a certain recent events, we have gone with political movies as the theme for this episode. And now, to help me determine the winner in today's head to head matchup, I have two assistant judges because we are testing out this format again and hopefully reverts this technical glitch curse that started on our first three judge episode. The competitor must get at least two of the judges to rule in their favor for the point. My first assistant judge has made a few appearances previously as a consulting judge. He's been a host and competitor, but is still working his way up the leaderboard with a record of 1-4. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, my name's Bobby. It's been a little while since I've been on here. I'm good to be back. This should be an interesting episode. I really do like the idea of the three judge format. I think it could make the game a little more interesting if you can persuade two people to get your vote. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right, and our second assistant judge is the co-creator of this podcast and one of the best competitors with a record of 6-1. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Johnny Dupe. I'm glad to be back on. We had a off week last week just due to scheduling issues for everyone, so it's good to be back. And we tried to basically do this on election night, but it's still relevant, very relevant, especially since it took a few days. So interested to see what these two competitors can do with some interesting set of political movies.
All right, and now we have two competitors today. Our first competitor played the last time we used this format and is currently 0-1. Why don't you tell the people who you are?
Tristan, are you going to tell? Oh, I'm just kidding. It's me. So my name's Daryn. I'm good to be back. Hopefully this time I can put a win in the win column. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Our second competitor is a little bit better than his 1-3 record shows. Why don't you tell the people who you are?
Hey guys, it's Tristan. When Joe said one of the best plays in the game, I was like, "That's me, guys. I'm here again." But I'm still building my way up.
He would have said the best competitor in the game, so I didn't know he was talking about me.
We'll see. But yeah, I'm 1-3. I'm hoping to make that go to 2-3, and I feel like 2-3 is a great return to greatness, and it's a great way to kick off a winning streak. So I'm excited to do that, especially after this very political week. We're going to have some political movies.
All right, and before we start, if you're listening to us through a podcast app, go to YouTube and find this episode of Movie Changeup. Give us that thumbs up, a comment, and subscribe to our channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, go to your favorite podcast app, download this episode, and give us a rating and review. If you think we gave you a 5-star podcast, give us that 5-star review. If you think we gave you a 4, 3, 2, or even a 1-star podcast, help us out and still give us that 5-star review. If you're watching live, feel free to comment, and I'll read the comments live if they're not shitty. Bobby, if you'd read the 7 movies we're doing today.
Yeah, so we have Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter from 2012, The Campaign also from 2012, Election from 1999, Olympus Has Fallen from 2013, Team America World Police from 2004, Parkland from 2013, and The Post from 2017.
All right, and Johnny, if you read the 7 rules we are doing today.
All right, today our rules. 1 must involve time travel. 1 must be cast as a 1980s movie. 1 must be a teen comedy. 1 must be one only you want to watch. And then 1 must have Bane from The Dark Knight. 1 must be a foreign film, and 1 must be a martial arts movie.
All right, and we've determined who starts before the show, and that person is Tristan. Tristan, what movie are we doing first, and who is going first, you or Daryn?
I'm going to start with The Post, and I'll go first on this one.
All right, and before you start, I'm going to give a little background on The Post, which I forgot to have pulled up. But done 16 of these episodes, and I still haven't remembered everything. So The Post got an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is a 2017 American historical political thriller film directed and produced by Steven Spielberg. It stars Meryl Streep as Katharine Graham, the first female publisher of a major American newspaper, and Tom Hanks as Ben Bradley, the longtime executive editor of the Washington Post. Set in 1971, the Post depicts the true story of attempts by journalists at the Washington Post to publish the infamous Pentagon Papers, a set of classified documents regarding the 20-year involvement of the United States government in the Vietnam War and earlier in French Indochina back in the 1940s at the end of World War II. That's what the Post is. So,
for my version of the Post, I tried to capture that sort of like core of what the Post was going for, like this idea of a journalist having this higher ground integrity of being able to stand up against these oppressive forces trying to stop them. And I used my rule of making it a foreign film. I made it a French movie that's telling the story of Charlie Hebdo, the cartoonist political magazine that was the victim of a shooting a few years ago. My director, I used Céline Sicamara. She's a French director who just directed Portrait of a Lady on Fire, a really critically acclaimed movie that came out, I think, last year, the year before. It was on the top of a bunch of lists for best movie of the year, so I think it's a good chance for an indie director to do something a little bit bigger. In my cast here, I didn't cast a bunch of people because I think you want to cast obviously native French actors, so I don't know a ton of them, but I think that I would trust the director to know more than me in that regard. For my lead, who I have as Stephanie Charmbrunner, also known as Chag. He was one of the major cartoonists of the magazine. I have him played by Vincent Castle. You might know him from the most recent season of Westworld. And as the editor-in-chief of Charlie Hebdo, I have his name in real life is Gerard Biard, and I have Jean Renault playing him. You probably know him as Leon the Professional, but he was also played the Roach in The Five Bloods. And we know the general story of Charlie Hebdo, so I won't go into a super amount of detail of it, but I do want to get that behind-the-scenes story of what made this magazine so special and get to know these people who were ultimately the victims of a really terrible attack. So we focus on those two characters. You know, Chag was the publication of the president of publication at the magazine, so he was a pretty big up there person, and he was specifically controversial for his left-wing cartoons, where he did cartoons based off of cops, cartoons based off of left-wing sort of political figures. And the magazine went through a big hiatus in the 80s and was revived in 1992 when both of these people joined the company. So I think showing them being these leaders of rebranding this magazine as a leftist magazine would be really interesting. But of course, the main focus of the story is about their choice to publish the picture of Muhammad several times in their cartoons, which was what ultimately triggered a lot of the anger and then the ultimately violent whiplash of their actions. So I think we would see that choice and why they decided to stand up against hatred. But I think the ultimate better ending to that is that we focus on the story that after this happened, instead of shutting down, instead of delaying, instead of firing people, instead of closing down the company, the next day they made their deadline for the next issue, the day after the shooting. And I think that's really inspirational. And because not just that, but because their next issue, they put that cartoon on the front cover. And they weren't ashamed of it. They weren't afraid of it. They put that cartoon out there and dedicated all the funds from that publishing to the victims and their families. And ultimately, that issue sold over 5 million copies and had to be reprinted internationally because it was such a massive, massive financial hit. So I think taking that idea of the Post of these journalists who stand up against oppressive forces to publish anyway is something that would be relevant to this new version of the Post, where they decide to publish this anyway, to stand up against hatred and violence and to publish this very controversial magazine cover, and ultimately it was a big success for them.
All right, it's a really interesting take on the movie. Daryn, what is your pitch for the Post?
Okay, so my pitch, I decided to implement the rule of it being an 80s film. So for my director, I have Martin Scorsese, and I'll read off some of my cast here first. I have Mia Farrow as Kay Graham. For Ben Bradley, I have Michael Douglas. For Tony Bradley, I have Richard Gere. Ben Bagdikian, I have Christopher Walken. Fritz Beebe, I have Gene Hackman. Arthur Parsons, Jack Lemmon. I also have Clint Eastwood, Burt Reynolds, and then I also have Richard Nixon in a couple scenes in the movie, and I have one of the greats, Walter Matthau, in that role. So with this being an 80s movie, I wanted to kind of have it like maintain that kind of like Oscar bait kind of style, but obviously transitioning like the entirety of the cast and crew to resemble as if it came out in the 80s. So the film's plot centering around like the Pentagon Papers, a lot of that's going to stay pretty much the same. Just one minor change that I would add is just adding a few key scenes, like I said, with Richard Nixon, including the entirety of the Watergate scandal as part of like the film's like final act, with the resolution with like Kay Graham and Ben Bradley. So I would add that in there as well. But otherwise, I would keep a lot of the story mainly the same, just a little bit with that 80s kind of style and with a lot of those legendary actors from the 80s. So that is my take.
All right. Bobby, do you have any questions for either of them?
I mean, I not really big questions. I think anything that I have will come out in the arguments. Just a little bit maybe from Tristan on, because it's a very different story. Not a very different story, but it's a different true story. So I guess just how is it quite a remake of The Post? But I think I got that for the most part.
Yeah, I just think it captures the original themes and premise of The Post, even if it's not about the exact same people publishing the exact same article. It's about journalists who stand up against society and the status quo and stand up against oppressive forces to do what they know is right. And I think that's the ultimate story of The Post, even if it's not the same characters doing the same things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Johnny, do you have anything?
Yeah.
My one question for Daryn is why did you feel that this story is something you feel like Scorsese would have been tackling in the 80s? It seems kind of off kilter for what he was doing at this time.
Well, I mean, obviously he's one of the best directors, not only of that generation, but of in film history as a whole. I feel like he is a talented enough guy where even though like Taxi Driver, a lot of those other movies that he did maybe back then, maybe it might not have been, it might seem a little off, but I think especially as his career kind of turned out, I mean, he can handle this kind of film. He can handle pretty much any kind of film, in my opinion, like that, especially when it comes to a real life event like this. So I feel like, especially with the talent, when you give him that kind of talent, I think he'll turn on a really good movie.
All right. I don't really have any questions. So, Tristan, what don't you like about Darren's pitch?
I think Martin Scorsese sounds like a good pick for it, but I don't know if it sounds like a good pick in the 80s. I think he could do that now. I think like post-Wolf of Wall Street, I'd be really interested in seeing his take on this kind of a story. But at that point in his career, I would much rather see him be doing like crime thrillers and things more in his wheelhouse that really helps him like get his gear for what he becomes as a director. And I don't think that a story about newspaper publishers by Martin Scorsese would be very timely for his career at that point, and even timely for the world that they were in, because I don't think the 80s was necessarily a time where freedom of speech was being limited or anything like that, where it would have really been powerful in the moment of it coming out, because a lot of what the Post did so well was it came out in this era when the president was directly attacking media and directly attacking the news and directly attacking the New York Times, the New York Post, all these very big name people. So I think that has a timely element that would be missing if it was in the 80s.
That's a fair point. I would still argue that when you have the talent in the with the director and in the cast and whatnot, I feel like it might not be as relevant in terms of like with obviously not with Trump, but I still feel like you could turn out a really good movie. And even with Scorsese being an odd pick, I think it would be a good refreshing change for him to do something like that, even if it wasn't the 80s, And I think that it would still garner a lot of award attention. And I think that could only help your career. So, and with yours, what was the inspiration that made you pick to go more of that with like the French director and go in that direction with yours?
I think that's a really powerful story of the Charlie Hebdo massacre, and then ultimately the company coming and reuniting with each other and publishing this big issue the day after it happened, and that was like a huge news story. Just obviously not to the same vein as the original story of the Post, but it might have been honestly that got global coverage. That shooting, people in the United States talking about that the day it happened. I think that's a massive, massive event, and seeing like the behind the scenes of these people interacting and the choices they made to publish that picture would be really interesting to me, because I learned a lot just from researching it in the last week doing this pitch, and I think it would be a fascinating story to get the depth into. A lot like it was for this. We all know generally, oh, they published them and this is what happened, but we didn't get to see like the actual terror and the anguish of making that choice and knowing my whole career, maybe my life hangs on this one choice. And I think bringing that forward to this more modern story would be really relevant to the original post.
Right. My only concern would be that it might not be something that would catch people's eye. I mean, it would be one of those movies where, like, for example, I can't even think of the movie off the top of my head right now, but like a movie example for like where, yeah, it's a good movie and it gets Oscar attention, but it doesn't necessarily gain a lot at the box office. It doesn't really catch people's eye in the grand scheme of things. That would be my main concern with that. But
yeah, I mean, I'm ultimately trying to go for like a critically acclaimed movie. You know, this is like something that I can see winning like foreign film at the Oscars, something that would be really big and really relevant and really timely. Sure, it's not going to sell like millions and millions of tickets at the box office, but I think it's something a lot of people would see. People saw the post because it had good actors and good directors and a relevant story. So I think people would see this too.
And probably capitalize after the award season, probably. For sure.
Yeah, when something wins Best Picture, everyone's like, oh, I got to go see that. And then they suddenly make a lot more money than they did before.
Yeah, crazy how that works. All right, I'm ready if you guys are.
Yeah, I think I got my mind made up.
Yeah.
Do you guys need to hear anything else, or do you guys have anything else?
I just one quick question for Tristan. Are you going to depict the shooting in the movie? The actual
I would have
attack?
the event in there, but I'm not going to have it be like a really terrifying action scene or anything like that. I think the biggest problem when you show these kind of stories is that they make it really scary and really intense and like this thing that feels like an action movie scene. I want to focus very, very much on the victims and not even really bother with the attackers as much.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Bobby, you just asked a question, so I'm going to start with you. Where are you leaning? Who gets your vote?
So I think that answer by Tristan made me lean a little bit towards him. I think both movies sound interesting. I do think Tristan's point of that. I think that it's a movie that Scorsese would make now and not necessarily in the 80s at the time. That was a good point for me. And I really like that I do know that story with the cartoonist. So that was intriguing. And I like the idea. I think it captures the idea of the movie, even if it's not the same true story. It's kind of the same general concept. So I take that, and I think you used the rule well. It sounds like a movie I'd want to see.
All right, Johnny, who gets your vote?
Yeah, for me, this came down to, I think for me, just picturing the movie and something I'd be interested in. Scorsese is probably my favorite director of all time, but there are a few movies of his that I haven't seen and have no interest in seeing because it's when he strays too far away from what makes his movies great. And that's honestly, I think the problem with the post that came out. I never was interested in seeing it because I don't care about a Steven Spielberg, Oscar Beatty version of this story. If you had gone a different direction, Daryn, and went with like Oliver Stone, who did Platoon and Born on the 4th of July, so he already tackled some Vietnam issues in the same era, that would have been a perfect fit. Or someone like Alan J. Pakula, who likes the journalist stories because he did all the President's Men and the Parallax View. I think those would have been really good choices and would have given me a better tone of what your movie is. For Tristan, Celine Sciamma is probably the best upcoming director in Hollywood right now because I had zero interest in the storyline of Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I was completely captivated from start to finish. And like Tristan said, for like his attack, you don't have to make it this horrifying scene, but I know it's going to be tense because of his directing choice. So I think that fits the storyline well. So I'm also going to go with Tristan on this one.
Yeah, it's a clean sweep because I don't like. This is what I was looking for the based on a true story movie. It's a reboot of the movie, but I still felt like there was a lot of the same themes and similar ideas of the original post. Great use of the rule. And with Daryn's, I felt like it was a lot of more of the same. And the first post just bored me, and I just felt like he didn't do enough with it to make me want to see his version of the post. It's just like the same, similar cast, just plug and play. actors from the 80s, and I don't know if Martin Scorsese's version of The Post is going to be much more exciting than Steven Spielberg, so I was going to go with Tristan as well. And so, Daryn, it's your pick. What movie are we going with?
Okay, I will go with Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
All right, finally a good movie. And who goes first? Who's going to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, let me give a little background on Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. It's from 2012. It got a 34% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I understand why, but it's a little underappreciated for me.
A little high.
It's a little low. That movie is at least like a 55 to 60%.
We didn't see the same movie.
It's an American dark fantasy action horror film directed by some guy whose name I'm not going to pronounce. It's based on the 2010 mashup novel of the same name. Benjamin Walker stars as the title character, the real-life figure Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States, portrayed in the novel and the film as having a secret identity as a vampire hunter. There you go. That's the background on Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
All right, so with this here, my rule is I'm going to pick a movie that only I would want to watch. I know that might not be the most appealing to everyone, but if you know anything about me, my favorite movies are usually directed by my favorite director, Zack Snyder, so he's going to be the guy doing this. For my cast, for Abe Lincoln, I have Tom Hanks because I think, he kind of fits that mold of doing literally, he portrays a lot of realistic movies based on real life people. So I think he would be a really fun Tom Hanks would be really fun Abe Lincoln. I also have Zac Efron, Ray Fisher in there as well. For Mary Todd Lincoln, I have Jamie Lee Curtis. I also have Tom Welling, one of my favorite actors, Ross Butler from 13 Reasons Why and Shazam. Stephen Amell, Alexandra Daddario. For Thomas Lincoln, I have Ben Affleck. For Nancy Lincoln, I have Teresa Palmer. For Jefferson Davis, I have Benedict Cumberbatch. And for Senator Jeb Nolan, I have John Schneider. For those that don't know who he is, he was obviously John Kent on Smallville, and he was also in Dukes of Hazzard. So my take on this would be being one, what I would want to watch. I would make this kind of like a pseudo prequel to like the Army of the Dead franchise on Netflix coming out next year. It'll obviously take place back in the 1800s and retain kind of a similar style and tone to the original, but it's going to definitely turn up the violence and the dramatic tension up definitely a couple notches. It's, especially with hearing what Army of the Dead's going to be kind of like this crazy sort of like balls to the walls kind of intense action thriller where the zombies are actually going to be a lot more like faster and a lot deadlier. I think that would be a really fun kind of prequel movie to that. So that's my take.
All right. Interesting. Tristan, what is your version of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter?
So for my Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, I also went with only movie that I would watch. I was thinking about putting Zack Snyder, then I remembered who I was facing against, and I said, of course, he's going to use Zack Snyder for whatever movie he used that rule for, no matter which one it is. So I went with Rian Johnson on mine. I love The Last Jedi, and I'm like super hyped to see whatever he can do next, and I don't even care what it is, so I'm ready for that. And my producers are Taylor Swift and Andrew Lloyd Webber, because of course Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is a musical. It's a big gothic musical from the makers of Cats. It stars Henry Cavill as Abraham Lincoln. He's fighting Nick Cage, who plays a racist Southern vampire master. And it co-stars Taylor Swift, who's like this angel between death and life. And she has, of course, a musical number throughout. She sings the big number that maybe will be the failed Oscar attempt in Vein of Cats. So she produces the entire soundtrack. It's filled with original songs that feature the cast members. And after dying from an assassination, Abraham Lincoln is resurrected by the angelic Taylor Swift as a spirit. She entrusts Lincoln to hunt down all the racists and fascists and surviving Southerners across the whole United States who are all secretly vampires. And Abraham Lincoln goes on this mass killing spree, complete with instead of fights, they're just they're just sing duels. You know, they sing at each other, and whoever sings the best just dies. You know, they just explode. And of course, there's a tragic love song between the angelic Taylor Swift and Mary Todd Lincoln, because secretly the angel is in love with Mary Todd Lincoln, and she's stuck at home, depressed with no Abraham around, and Taylor sings from the window, sad that she cannot comfort her lover, Mary Todd Lincoln. And in the final battle, vampire Abraham Lincoln, he fights all these giant vampires in this big musical battle. You know, they're all singing at each other. They're all trying to out-sing Abraham Lincoln, but you can't. You know, it's Henry Cavill's Abraham Lincoln. He doesn't get out-sang. Not by Nick Cage, not by anyone. And ultimately, he defeats Nick Cage, and Abraham Lincoln is reinstalled as zombie president Abraham Lincoln, and he saves the United States.
Okay, then. I got a question for each of you. Tristan, who plays Mary Todd Lincoln in your movie?
I don't have anyone written down, but I'm sure they're wonderful.
Okay, then. And Daryn, my question for you: in the movie, is Abraham Lincoln fighting vampires or is it zombies? Because you said it's a prequel to his Army of the Dead movie.
Yeah, it'll be vampires.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's all the question I. Oh,
We
we lost
lost
Johnny.
Johnny again.
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right. So, Bobby.
I
any
guess.
questions for each of them?
Yeah. I mean, I understand both of your movies. For Tristan, I guess with the balls to the wall kind of musical, kind of crazy movie. I guess defend Rian Johnson a little bit. I do love Rian Johnson, but he doesn't quite do. He does bombastic, I feel like, in a very different way than you described. So I guess defend that. And then I think for Daryn, I guess, how is this going to differ from other Zack Snyder movies? Like his like the show coming up, his other zombie movie and all that, and I guess the action style that he does. Is it going to be any different?
I'll
Tristan,
answer
you wanna go
first. I'll
first?
say I picked Rian Johnson because I want to go slightly off of what he normally does, because I think that adds to the rule a little bit. Like, if something only I want to watch, I want it to be like kind of out of the realm of this director's wheelhouse, but not quite. You know, he does bombastic, he does kind of silly, but this should just be like completely over his level of silliness, which I think would turn off a lot of the like casual audience who would want to see this, and it would just be me in the theater by myself watching this.
Okay.
All right.
And then, oh, sorry, I was just gonna. You were asking me about how mine would differ from his other movies, or how, like, is that what you're asking with
Yeah,
mine?
pretty much. Just, I mean, I know you're a big Zack Snyder fan, but is this going to fall into like the same exact kind of vein as his other movies, or is it going to vary a little bit?
I think, and it's a shame we haven't seen a trailer for Army of the Dead yet, because that would really give a kind of a better picture and idea of kind of what the style of that movie is going to be like. I kind of envision this kind of as like a mix or a blend between 300 and something kind of like Sucker Punch in a way, where it's kind of like it has that darker kind of, and a lot of action and a lot of violence and whatnot, but it has that signature, even like the slow-mo action sequences and stuff like that. So
Okay.
yeah,
Sounds good. Yeah, that's all I have.
All right. I started, I think, with Tristan last time. So, Daryn, what do you not like about Tristan's pitch? What any problems?
Okay. I know this is supposed to be about movies that only you'd want to see, but is it the idea that pitching it so more than just you would want to watch it and like it? Right?
I'll say this, and this is to both of you. I had to fight this one time, and what we've learned is the best way to pitch this is to talk about how other people would love the other person's movie. Is the best way to fight against this rule, because you both use the same rule for this movie. So the best way is basically to talk about how the other person's movie would appeal to more people than just them.
Right. Well,
Johnny, got you back on your phone.
there we go.
Angelica's setting up her laptop, and I'm going to see if that works. But for a second, I'm on my phone.
Did you have any questions for either of us?
Yeah, where are we at? Did you guys?
They were like just about to start fighting each other. We've each asked questions, but
All right, perfect. I'm not sure what they asked you guys, but basically, I think this is going to come down to, why is this a movie? This is going to come down to, I'm going to pick whoever convinces me that their movie is one that I want to see less, because it's just for you.
Okay,
so
yeah.
if this is a movie that I want to see more, then you're going to lose. So why is your movie only for you and not for anyone else?
Yeah, that's basically what I told them. I told them, because they both use the same rule, the best way to fight this movie is to talk about essentially how good the other person's movie is. So Daryn, I guess fight your movie first. Or
You have Taylor Swift. You have Ryan Johnson from Star Wars. How's it getting better than that? And you have Henry Cavill being, strong and sexy and everything. So, I mean, how does it get better than that, right?
Well, I mean, my one attack on yours is that it sounded good. It sounded like something that I would actually see. Like, I love Zack Snyder. I know he has a really big fan base. He announced the Snyder Cut, and the whole internet lost their shit for multiple days on end. And I think that shows that regardless of how people don't like a lot of his movies, people still come out to see what he's going to do next, even if they're not super into what the premise is of the movie. So I think yours sounds like something a lot of people would watch. People will always watch Zack Snyder's movies, even if they're bad.
And see, that's just it. People are just going to hate on it just because he's the one directing it. So, I mean, why would you pick mine, right?
That is true, but people love Batman v Superman. People love Man of Steel. They have a hating cult amongst them. But we both talk about these movies all the time and how much we like them both. So you can't say there's not at least a group of people who follow Zack Snyder everywhere he goes.
Guilty as charged.
No one really saw Cats, and anyone who did just made fun of how terrible it was. And I think if you said, "Oh, the people who made Cats are going to team up with Ryan Johnson, who ruined Star Wars, and they're going to make an Abraham Lincoln musical that totally disregards the source material and does something that's very different from the book and the original movie," it sounds like something that would just be like Cats. No one would go see it.
But I would disagree, because I mean, when you think of like the one I pitched, they're like, yeah, we've already seen 100,000 other vampire and zombie movies. We've already seen that before. Whatever. But they're like, wow, this is like so crazy and bizarre. Like, it's almost like, The Rumor. It's like you have to watch it, So
that's true. But everybody's seen zombie movies before, and yet we're all hyped for whatever Zack Snyder's next movie is going to be, another zombie series.
Yeah, but I mean, yours just sounds like the kind of movie where it's like it's just, this is so crazy, I have to at least see it. Even if you have no interest in it, you have to at least see it. I think some people would just be turned off just by, I don't know, seeing who's directing it or whatever, So.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think the Cats connection really, really hits this. I think Ryan Johnson has a following, but he has a really, really intense online hate fan base that will just boycott anything he makes, and will make weeks and weeks and weeks of YouTube videos about how he's ruining everything in their lives because they made a movie he doesn't like.
And people don't already do that about Zack Snyder?
That is true. People still go see the movies.
Yeah. All right, I'm ready if you guys are.
Yeah, I think I have my mind made up. Johnny, are you there?
Yeah.
All right, you got your mind made up. You know who gets your vote?
Yeah, I think it's tough because I don't want to see either of these. And Tristan sounds like a much worse movie, but I don't know. My thing is, Tristan doesn't sound like even a realistic thing of being made, and I don't know if that helps him or hurts him. Daryn's I could see actually being made and is terrible, because Zack Snyder's just the worst. But you know what? It's a movie just for someone that they want to see. I don't think Tristan actually wants to watch the movie he described. I think Daryn would actually enjoy
I would watch
his
this
more.
like every day of my life.
Yeah.
I've had
Taylor
enough
Swift in a
conversations.
musical.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It
He liked Cats.
You did like Cats, which is a problem.
I can
But-
pull up my signed Taylor Swift poster somewhere in this room and show you guys that.
Yeah.
I think box office wise, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to tell. They both are bad. But yeah, I think Daryn described a movie that he wants to see, and that just the problem with the original one is that it took itself so seriously that it was unwatchable, and that is exactly what a Zack Snyder one would do. And at least with Tristan's, it could be like a fun hate watch and be like, why did this happen? And Darren's, I feel like, is like more unwatchable. So I'm going to go with him.
You're going with which one? Who are you going with?
I'm going to go with Daryn.
All right, Bobby, who's got your vote?
So this was tough because it's weird to judge this rule. I haven't judged this one before, but I guess because Darren's is a movie I'd rather see, I'm probably going to end up going with Tristan. But it was a tough fight. But it's like I like Zack Snyder more than Johnny does. I don't love every movie, but I love Man of Steel. I like 300. He has some good movies. And even though it would be generic, I feel like that would be a movie quite a few more people would see with Tom Hanks in there too. And then with Tristan's, it's so crazy and over the top, and singing duels in a vampire movie. Like, I don't think a lot of people would like to see that. I think it would have fun like memes pretty much, but it wouldn't be a great movie. So I think I'm going to go with Tristan, but that was a weird fight for me for sure.
All right, so my thing is Taylor Swift got brought up and how popular she is. Henry Cavill got brought up and how popular he is, and Ryan Johnson got brought up and how like he has a fan base. The one thing I didn't remember hearing get brought up was Tom Hanks in Darren's movie, and how he's a popular actor, and the fact that Tristan didn't bring up the fact that Tom Hanks is starring in a movie, a popular actor that everyone loves. That's the moment when he got coronavirus. Everyone was like, "Oh shit, coronavirus is real." He's like America's dad.
America's dad.
And the fact that Tristan didn't hit on that as being something that only Darren would want to watch of Tom Hanks being in his movie, I'm gonna have to go with Darren. So
fair enough. Yeah.
Forgot he was in that.
So we got a tied up game, 1-1. And Tristan, it's your pick. And what movie are we doing and who goes first?
Give me
I'll
1
go
second. I'm gonna back out real quick so I can switch.
All right. Yeah, we can keep going, and he doesn't need to read the description for the movie and all that. So.
Yeah, my movie is going to be Election from 1999.
All right. Are you going first, or is
he can go first. Darren can go first.
Okay.
Right,
For Election?
So Election got a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is a 1999 American black comedy film directed by Alexander Payne, based on Tom Perotta's 1998 novel of the same name. The plot revolves around a student body election and satirizes politics and high school life. The film stars Matthew Broderick as Jim McAllister, a popular high school social studies teacher, and Reese Witherspoon as Tracy Flick, an overachieving student whom he dislikes. When Tracy runs for student government president, Jim sabotages her candidacy by backing a rival candidate and tampering with the ballot count. So, Darren, what is your pitch for Election?
Okay, so for mine, the rule I picked time travel. I wanted to mix this one up a little bit. For my director, I have Robert Zemeckis. Most people probably know him from Back to the Future, but he's also done a lot of like rated R movies, movies based on real life and whatnot more recently. I think he'd be a fun pick to kind of mold the two of them together. But I'm kind of pitching mine a little bit different. So mine is going to be kind of like a sequel to the miniseries 11/22/63 that starred James Franco. So Jake, now back in the present teaching high school again, feels as if someone has time traveled to the present with a new football jock, Paul, joining the race for the class election. No for student body president. He knows that Tracy is the better and smarter candidate. Paul is just way more popular due to his athlete status. So with Paul set to win the election, not to mention the strange inklings around him, Jake kind of pieces together what time in history Paul is from, because he gets that idea that Paul's not from this era. And he figures out he's from 1999. And he goes back strictly on the basis of trying to figure out how and why Paul time traveled. As he discovers there's plenty of familial and athletics-related knots to untangle that kind of speaks to the American condition as a whole. And I'll read off my cast here as well. So obviously in the main role, I have James Franco. For Tracy Flick, I have Elle Fanning. For Paul, I have Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things. I think that'd be kind of a huge role for him. Tammy Metzler, I have Anya Taylor-Joy from The Witch and Split. And then for Paul's parents, I have Phil Morris from Doom Patrol. He was also in Smallville as well. And then I have Kamira Westbrook from All American. I also have Joe Manganiello as a coach. I also have Alexandra Breckenridge from This Is Us and Virgin River. And then for some of the other students, kind of to appeal to that demographic more, I have Jazir Bruno from The Witches in Atlanta and Samantha Logan from All American as well. So that is my pitch.
All right. Daryn, what do you got?
You mean Tristan?
Yeah, whatever. Why not?
Let's go twice.
Yeah, right. Then I win,
Yeah,
right?
I didn't hear you the first time. Just run it back from the top. Let's go. No. Okay, Tristan, what do you got?
Yeah, my version of Election, I made a 1980s movie. Physically, I had it come out in 1988, towards the end of the 80s, but right around an election year. I had it directed by John Hughes, who had just come off of some huge, that was like his peak of his career, and I think he'd just done Planes, Trains, and Automobiles like a year before this, so this would be while he was still on his hot streak there. And I have my cast is Michael J. Fox, who plays Jim, a good-natured young conservative who's like a Reagan-loving high school student, similar to a character Michael J. Fox played on a TV show earlier in his career than this. He runs for school president against Tracy, a classmate who's a liberal, book-smart candidate from a yuppie family. She's played by Molly Ringwald. And Anthony Michael Hall from Breakfast Club and all of John Hughes' classics. He plays a campaign manager friend of Michael J. Fox's character, who's trying to help him win the election so that he can learn how to be cool from Michael J. Fox in order to win over the affections of Molly Ringwald's character. So there's sort of that like love story in the middle of this election story. So we see Jim and Tracy, who were initially on obviously polar opposite sides of every issue. Michael J. Fox is playing up the Reaganomics type stuff, and Molly Ringwald's character, she's Tracy. She's leaning into more of like the post-hippie kind of new liberal era of the late 80s. We see them have sort of campaign debates. There's a famous campaign debate in the original movie, and I sort of brought that into here. So we see a campaign speech where Tracy gives like a sort of reasoned and policy-driven speech about what she's going to do, and then she's run up by Jim, who gives this sort of big bombastic high-energy speech where he's like, "Oh, I'm going to give everybody pizza parties every day," and like, you know, those typical like unmeetable promises people will give in a campaign, but turned down to like a high school level. I think that would be pretty funny. And we see these two characters who are on opposing sides slowly start to connect and learn that their two worldviews have more in common than they think, and they eventually learn to have some respect for each other. And even if they don't agree on things, they don't change each other's minds. They both realize that their opposing sides have things they can learn from. So Tracy learns to be a little more bombastic, a little more character-driven in her presentation. She learns to open up more, give her more personality, something that was big in Reagan's conservatism. People were very big on this, sort of like Trump is now. They're very personality-based people. And I think that's something that she would learn. And I think Jim will learn from her that there's room for policies, learn to slow down, there's room to be honest with people who are looking up to you. And I think both of them can learn two lessons from each other and ultimately learn to sort of come together as friends. And ultimately, Michael J. Fox does win the election, but Tracy is still friends with him afterwards. So we get sort of this ending similar to Breakfast Club, where it's like, oh, are they still going to be friends, or was it just this like momentary thing that connected them to each other? And that's my pitch.
All right. I don't really have a question for Tristan. I do have a question for Daryn. My question, I don't fully understand your plot of how like the time travel comes in and how it all connects together, I guess. So that's what I have for you. If you could go deeper into like the plot of your movie.
For sure, yeah. So the part where the time travel comes in is when Jake, he realizes that Paul is actually from he's actually from a different era. He's from a different time. Okay. And so he's traveling back into the past to discover why Paul came to the future in a way. Right. So that's kind of where like it dives into like you see from his family, like an African American family who doesn't have a great upbringing and has to kind of fight for everything he gets, and so that's kind of the route I was going with that.
All right. And then, do we ever learn like why he came back to present, or why he came back to, I guess, now?
Yeah, I didn't really go too deep into that part of it, but basically, it's a way kind of like there's actually you guys probably have no idea what I'm going to be talking about, but there's an episode towards the end of Smallville where the character named Booster Gold comes from the future back to the past because he knows what's going to happen, and he's going to be the cool. He's going to seem really cool, and like he's going to one up Superman basically, and that's sort of why he does that, is because he wants to be he has a better chance of being viewed that in that way. He has a chance to start over, start fresh. So
All right, yeah. I get what you're saying. I'm a big Booster Gold fan. I named my car Booster because it's gold. So I get what you're saying. Bobby, any questions?
No, I think I'm after that, because that was my main thing, was just the plot of Daryn's, but I got a better picture there. So I don't really have anything too much. I just kind of want to hear him fight it out.
All right, and Johnny, anything from you?
Yeah, same thing. I've never seen Election, so I'm just interested to see what one entices me more in the duel.
All right, yeah. I think I asked Daryn last time. Tristan, to start this off, what are your problems with Daryn's pitch?
My biggest problem is similar to the question brought up, is I don't really see how the time travel factors into this plot directly. Like, I get that the character time traveled before the movie, like in a different show, but this plot doesn't really have anything to do with time travel. So I don't really think it's a time travel movie just because there's a character who in a previous life time traveled. And I don't really see like how James Franco being that character from that show is super necessary for this story. Like, I would understand if like his knowledge of events from the 60s was able to like help him win, or like something he learned about JFK could help him win, but he's just kind of that character showing up in this other movie. I don't really think it holds together. There's not a lot of time travel in this movie at all, and I don't understand why it's a sequel to the show that's not even close to this in any way.
Do you want me to respond, or do you want?
Yeah, you go.
Okay, so the reason why I went with this is because I think the reason why I picked this to be a sequel to that is because I think it'd be a fun kind of further exploration of that character. Where I think when you look back at this, at the 11/22/63 series, I think one of the things that kind of stuck with me is that, he went to go back to try to stop JFK from being assassinated, but I also think that it's also his curiosity as well. And I think that would also be another thing where, like, in terms of this would be like an interesting way of exploring a different part of the past. So it's kind of related where it's exploring a different part of the past to kind of get at a better feel for, a different kind of demographic per se. And it carries on because he's back. It starts off with him back in the present, which is where the original series started off with. So he would be back in, and basically he spent so much time in the 60s and he felt so out of place in the present. I think that would be an interesting way of further exploring that as well.
I see that. So a point for mine is that I think it's a really good point in John Hughes' career for him to do this. I think he's come off of a really, really strong run of his sort of high school kid movies, and then he did Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which was out of that wheelhouse, and I think this could be like a comeback movie for him, getting back to the high school setting, getting back to his classic cast. And he didn't really do, after Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, he didn't do like great stuff after that. So I think this could have been a good way to like get his career in a different direction. So I would be really interested to see him take that on.
See, the thing with that is I can definitely see that being a movie. I can definitely see that, I can definitely envision that. The only thing is that it kind of seems redundant to me because we've already seen like The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. There's so many of those classic teen 80s movies. I think another one would just kind of seem like I've already seen that before, and that would be my biggest thing with yours. I would still watch it, but yeah.
I see that, but I do think it's a lot different from what he's done before. Like he's done movies with high school students, but like one that's specifically about an election would be unique, and it's a way to bring in the sort of commentary that he brought into stuff like Breakfast Club, where it was like, oh, these people you think you don't actually know them very well, And I think taking those archetypes of like the yuppie liberal who's trying to like change everything in America, and then the conservative Reagan loving people who think that everything's perfect and there's no problems at all in the 80s. There's no AIDS, there's no this, there's no that. And I think that could be something that we could learn from, like just seeing these people with two polar opposite views. Even in the 80s, politics was very, very divisive, especially in the 80s. You know, Reagan inspired a ton of division among progressive and democratic people. So I think even though some of the division is still happening today, it's not like it just started now. You know, back in the 80s, it was very prominent, and I think people will be ready to see something that tries to bridge the gap between these divided parties.
See, my only thing would be that when you think back to Reagan in the 80s, I completely understand what you're saying about the divisiveness. I just don't think that would be it's not a completely reflected opinion on the mass people, just because he completely destroyed Walter Mondale in the 84 election. So, I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from, but I don't think that would be a view that would be held by a lot of like the mainstream audience per se.
And I tried to factor that in because I didn't like Michael J. Fox like the bad guy, you know, where like he's not mean, he's not like cruel, he's just a conservative. And sometimes that comes out in a little bit of his personality and some personality elements that the audience doesn't like about him. But I think the ultimate point of the movie would be like, hey, the stuff we don't like about both people, maybe we should try and come together instead of going further and further and further apart. Because we know from future view what can happen if that happens. So,
right. I just think mine will be a little bit more relevant in terms of like you see a kid who's comes from a bad upbringing and tries to go about something in a way where they think they're doing it the right way, but they're not, and having to come to terms with that. And I think especially, you know, considering the climate of our world that we've been in this last year, I think that would be really interesting seeing a person of color having to, especially with Caleb McLaughlin. I mean, he's a big star from Stranger Things, and I think that'd be a really cool kind of fun kind of breakout role for him as well.
All right. I think I know where I'm going to go.
All right, yeah. I got everything I said. No, I'm good.
Yep.
All right, so I think I'm going to go with Tristan on this one, just because his movie, I felt like it was a good use of the rule. I understand where he went with his director, and I like his overall pitch and his cast. With Daryn's, I was still kind of just, I don't know if Zemeckis is really, like, he's worked with time travel in the past, but I don't know if he's like, sounds like he's the right fit for what this pitch is, and I don't really fully understand why it needs to be connected to a miniseries that basically, while I really liked, I don't know if anyone's really talking about, or it would really matter that it was connected to that miniseries. So I think I'm going to have to go with Tristan on this. Bobby, what are your
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think the connection to the miniseries really hurt you. It's one that I've heard good things about, but I haven't seen it. I know a lot of people have not seen it, and that's going to turn a lot of people off if they don't know this character or this time travel background very well. And Tristan just sounds like it. You know, it sounds like a John Hughes fun movie. I like Michael J. Fox. You know, you have a good cast. I think it would be fun. It would be very similar to all his other ones, but it sounds like one I'd rather see.
All right. Yeah. So Tristan officially gets the point. Johnny, would you
Yeah.
agree with Tristan as well?
Yeah, that would be a clean sweep for me as well. I think the idea of a time traveling, someone going back in time to win an election sounds like a premise for an awesome movie, but I just think Daryn messed up by involving the show and the James Franco stuff. Like, it didn't have to do with that stuff at all. I think you could have made your pitch really strong if you just made a serious movie about someone like rigging an election because they were from the future, or a funny movie about the same thing. It's basically like, it reminds me of like the Biff from Back to the Future Part 2, but kind of in reverse type thing. And yeah, you said Tristan's movie just sounds like any other John Hughes movie, but like John Hughes movies were all pretty good and they were all different. And this was not something that he ever dealt with in his movies. So I'd be interested to see this, and I would have watched his before I watched a one about a show that I was never interested in watching.
Yeah, I think
fair enough.
I think Daryn, if you had just made your show like a guy whose life never went right, and he was like a boring high school teacher, and he went back in time to help his younger self win a high school election, so he felt like that's where his life went wrong is when he lost. I feel like it'd be a lot more on board with your movie, but I just felt like connecting it with a show that people neither of the other judges had watched. I watched it. I really liked it.
Yeah, I know from competing here that if we try and tie stuff into like established TV shows and established media, it's really, really hard to win. So I think if you wouldn't have tied it into that miniseries, you would have definitely won this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. What do we got next, gentlemen?
Let's see. I will go with what the heck? I'll go with Parkland.
Parkland. Oh.
Okay.
Parkland.
And I'll go first.
All right. Let me figure out where it is on my list. Did I not write a description for Parkland? Oh, no, there it is. Parkland, it's a 2013 movie, 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's an American historical drama film that recounts the chaotic events that occurred following the 1963 assassination of John F. Kennedy. The film is based on Vincent Bugliosi's 2008 book, 4 Days in November, The Assassination of President John F. Kennedy. All right, Daryn, what do you got?
All right, so this one I really went back and forth on because I actually liked the movie the 2013 movie. I actually liked that one. I can't say I love it, but I thought it was a pretty decent movie. For this one, I went back and forth on this one. I decided to go with it being a foreign film. Kind of like in the vein of similar but different to what Tristan's first pitch was. So with this one, I'm actually I'll read off my take first. So I realize it's quite a significant change, obviously. But to implement the rule of this being foreign, I'm going to have this version of Parkland be like a true, like an anime production made overseas by Studio Ghibli, but having it take place obviously in the US back in '63 and have subtitles. So in other words, it'll be a foreign film, but because it'll be like foreign to the country producing the film, that's kind of where my rule comes into play. The plot would remain very much similar, but obviously incorporate some of the conspiracy theories to liven up the world and the dramatic tension a little bit. I'd also end the film with an end credit montage of Parkland's significance in having 4 of the main people from the JFK assassination actually all passed away there by 1970, which is kind of a unique kind of fact. So from the cast, for the director, I actually have, and I'm probably going to say some of these names wrong, but the director of Spirited Away, Hayao Miyazaki. I also have Haruka Tomatsu from Sword Art, doing the voice of Nurse Doris Nelson. For Jackie Kennedy, I have Yui Ishikawa from Violet Evergarden, which is a cool Netflix series. For Dr. Jim Carrico, this is the role that Zac Efron played. I have Yoshitsugu Matsuoka also from Sword Art Online, doing the role, and also the role of Roy Kellerman, which was Tom Elling's role. For the role of James Hosty and Father Oscar Huber, I have Nobunaga Shimazaki from Fruits Basket. I also have for Robert Oswald and Lee Harvey Oswald, I have Hiroshi Kamiya from Attack on Titan. I also have for JFK and LBJ, I have Mamoru Miyano from Death Note. And then Abraham Zapruder, Yuki Kaji for My Hero Academia. And for Searles, I have actually a voice cameo from the director himself, Miyazaki. So that's kind of my take for Parkland. I know it's kind of crazy and out there, but I think that'd be a really unique and interesting way of viewing the film. So,
all right,
yeah,
Tristan, what's your pitch for Parkland?
All right. Well, interestingly, I also went with a very out there and strange one. I haven't seen Parkland. Just looking at the poster made me want to fall asleep, so I made mine a little more exciting. Mine's a time travel movie. The director is Ava DuVernay. And my cast is Lakeith Stanfield as a mysterious patient who shows up at the hospital. Daniel Kaluuya is a first-year doctor who just started working at Parkland Hospital. Jesse Plemons is a bookish kind of nurse who's been there for a few years and is very strict about the rules. Zazie Beetz is a nursing student who's studying under Jesse Plemons. And it's about a trio of med students who work at the Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas during the 2020 coronavirus. a lot of them are new to the medical field, but of course during the virus, the hospitals got very desperate and were bringing in people who were just out of school to try and cover what they needed to get covered. And their chaos is interrupted when an unknown patient shows up with a gunshot wound, claiming he is from 1963. He tells Zazie Beetz, who's working as his doctor, and he says there's a secret room in the hospital that lets them travel back in time to November 22nd, 1963, the day JFK is said to be arriving after being shot. So Jesse Plemons, like I said, he's kind of a by-the-rules nurse, so he's saying, like, oh, we can't, this is crazy, we can't follow this guy's crazy stories, we have this virus to fight, we're way too busy, we have work to do, get back to work. But she confides in Daniel Kaluuya, who's, like I said, he's a first-year doctor, and he says, look, I don't really believe you, but I'll give you a couple hours, let's figure out what we can do, let's just listen to this guy's story and see what we can figure out. So, of course, it's true. There actually is a secret room hidden in the hospital that lets them travel back in time, but only to the morning of November 22nd, 1963. So they decide that they have to figure out in these few hours that they have between the morning and when he's shot how they're going to save him. So the first time they travel back in time, they come back and they say, okay, we're just going to use our modern medical knowledge and we're going to do like a really good surgery on JFK and he's going to survive. But that doesn't go well because, of course, he had really, really bad injuries when he showed up at the hospital. So they think, damn, we already fucked it up. I guess we got to try again. So they go back to this closet and they realize they can try every time they open and close the door. They can start at this morning over and over and over again. So they have multiple attempts to try and save JFK. So we get this sort of almost heist movie where this trio of characters is trying to work together despite the differences to figure out ways to save JFK. And of course, since they're able to travel multiple times, they're able to use that knowledge they gain in one trip to outsmart themselves in the next one. So maybe they go the first time and they try and stop the motorcade, but then Lee Harvey Oswald already shoots JFK after they stop. So maybe they say, okay, we got to stop it earlier. Maybe we got to like get one of us to be in the car with them. And eventually they're trying all these different ways. And every time they're trying it, he's still ending up dead. So eventually Zazie Beetz's character ends up in the car with JFK as he's driving up to the motorcade, and she tells him, like, hey, you're about to get shot and die. We don't know what to do, but I'm from decades in the future, and this is such a pivotal moment in American history that we don't want to lose you. We need you to come help us save this country. And he ultimately tells her, like, you can't mess with the past. I've learned from my experience as a president how important it is to, he learned from stuff like the Cuban Missile Crisis, how very, very tight history is, and how one little change can totally change history. And you might think it's going to help your current problem, but saving me could totally alter the entire course of the United States, and we never know what we could do. So ultimately, they have to let JFK die in order to keep history maintained, and they return to the 2020 Parkland Hospital, and they're reunited as a group, and they decide to work together to do the best they can to keep people safe during this virus, even if they can't change history. That's my pitch.
All right, so I have a question for each of you. Daryn, in a lot of the like Studio Ghibli Miyazaki films, there's like a lot of fantastical elements and like spirit creatures and stuff like that. Is there any of that in your version of Parkland, or is it all pretty straightforward and realistic, except for just the fact that it's animated?
I would say it is a little bit of both, where I would incorporate some of the conspiracy theory aspects, like the shooter on the grassy knoll, and just kind of weird stuff like that, and maybe more of that, like that, more of that, maybe like a little bit more like the violent, darker nature, like of the shooting and whatnot. But I wouldn't go too far into the fantastical part of it. I think it'd be a cool kind of thing to kind of mix up his repertoire of films, I guess I could say, and do something a little bit different and a little bit, something that I think would be kind of a cool way of reviewing that time in history, I guess. So.
All right. And Tristan, my question for you is, when Zazie Beetz gets in JFK's car and says, I'm from the future, you're going to get shot, why does he not say, get this crazy bitch out of my car, and instead of giving her an emotional, encouraging speech?
Well, I think you can tell from the way she's acting and the way she's talking to him that she's not crazy. She's very genuine. She's very, he can see in her emotions that she's really feeling what she's saying. And you might not believe her, but he, even if she's crazy, he has this moment to comfort her and say, oh, look, you know, you might be terrified about this event you think is going to happen, but history has a way of swinging back, and history has a way of looking dark and eventually becoming bright again, you know?
All right. Johnny, any questions for either of them?
I don't know. They both sound kind of interesting. My question for Tristan would mainly be, how do the rules of your time travel work? Because you made it sound like they're just going back to the same day over and over. Is this like okay, let's say one day they go back and he still dies or whatever, but when they go back in time, why is like nothing changing when they go back? Like every time they go back, shouldn't things be affecting the future? And then if they were to actually save him and they go back, like if your movie is just saying like they change things in the past and then nothing actually affects it unless they make JFK live. If they make him live and go back, it just seems like they're going to just reset it like normal anyway.
Well, I had it so that like when they do, like, it's a linear timeline, so when they go back and make changes, like you can see the changes happening, sort of like Back to the Future 2, where like he changes stuff and then he comes back in the second one and he's sort of like running side by side with himself, you know? So like they come back the second time and you can see like, oh, here's us from the first time going out and doing something. So we're gonna go try something else, and you see all these impacts, like the consequences of these actions all kind of like coming together in different ways. You know, so maybe the first one time they go back and they stop the car. So the next time they go back, they have to remember like, oh, right, we stopped the car, so we can't wait here. We have to go somewhere else because the car stops. And it's sort of like that, figuring out that math problem of like every time we come back, we're impacting the past.
All right. That's really all I got.
All right, Bobby, any questions?
So I guess for Daryn, why would Miyazaki and like the Japanese audience be interested in this very American moment? I guess is my first question.
That's a good question. I think that it would be since it's a foreign film, I think it would be like it's obviously a very, very big moment in our nation's history. And I think it would be it could be a really cool learning moment for to learn about, you know, like the history of other countries, I guess you could say, and being such an iconic moment in our country's history, and kind of how our world essentially nowadays is kind of coming together anyway, with social media and whatnot. And I think it would be a cool kind of way to view, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be 100% accurate either, because what version really is at the end of the day, if you think about it. But I think it'd be a cool way to explore it, a different way to explore that story, because it's been touched on so many times already. But I think it'd be a cool way to explore it in a different way. So,
okay. And then Tristan, yours, I guess I just need a little bit more defense. You don't even have to answer it now if you want, but more in your fight of kind of the tone of your movie and how that ending wouldn't come off as very corny. It actually reminds me, and this is probably gonna be a very niche audience that's gonna remember this, but every year on MLK Day, we watched a movie called Our Friend Martin. And it reminds me a lot of that, where these two go back in time and kind of are with MLK and realize that his death needed to happen and it still made impact. And it's like, it's a very corny educational video, and that's what yours reminded me of a little bit. It does sound good, but it has that corniness to it. So I just need that kind of defense.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be like sort of lighthearted, obviously, because it's going for like an uplifting sort of tone, you know? We're seeing these people who are going through a dark moment in their lives, and they go back in time trying to like change the past so it doesn't happen, but ultimately they learn like, oh, we can overcome darkness. And because I put Ava DuVernay in there because I think she can pull off sort of like a family sort of tone for this, like something that people would go to, whether they're adults, whether they're kids, and learn a lesson from it, and still have fun with the time travel elements too.
Okay, cool.
All right. So I have another question. It's for Bobby. Bobby, was that movie animated, and is there a scene of them on a train?
Yep.
Yeah, it's the one that we all watched.
We all watched it.
All right. Yeah, I had like some weird mental flashback of a memory I don't remember having. And as he started talking, I'm like, I think I've seen this, but yeah, okay.
I was like, wow, I think that must have been in my subconscious when I was writing this pitch.
Exactly. All right. Yeah, I guess I'll let you guys fight it out.
okay, so Tristan, with your movie, a couple things. The tone of it doesn't sound consistent to me, and then also it doesn't sound like there's really like the whole point of the movie is nothing really changed at the end of the day. But I feel like there's no arc, there's no progression to get to that at the end. And I feel like everything that kind of happened was kind of for nah, and like nothing really at the end of the day really go, and you just kind of go in a circle, I guess is the kind of how the way you described it to me, that's kind of how I viewed it. And if that's the point, then it's like, what's the point of the story, I guess? Like, yeah, I guess, like we're supposed to not kill him, but in a way that kind of sounds almost exactly like the 11/22/63 James Franco series. So I need your help on that one.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen that series, so I imagine that it sounds similar in the premise. But my defense of the story here is that sure, it goes in a circle, but that's like how stories usually are. Like there's a story circle, they come back to where they started, but they've learned a lesson and they've changed because of their experiences. And when they start the movie in the beginning of the first act, they're in 2020. Everything's kind of shitty. They're very down. They're very depressed. They think they're losing hope in this current pandemic, in this current year, and they ultimately learn the lesson of not having to lose hope, of learning that sure, we can go through really dark moments like JFK getting assassinated or like the coronavirus, and we can ultimately as a country still get through that and still become something worthwhile afterwards. And I think that's the lesson they learn. Like, sure, they don't save JFK or they don't like stop the virus, but they learn a lesson as a trio of characters.
Right. Do you have anything for me about my movie?
Well, I think I'm just getting a little bit of a clash here because I understand that it's like an anime movie from like Studio Ghibli style directors, and I just don't know if I necessarily see the story that you told fitting in like a Studio Ghibli kind of world. Like they've brought up before, the very fantastical stuff like Spirited Away, stuff like My Neighbor Totoro are all very like there's creatures and there's magic and they're otherworldly. They're very like a kid goes to another world and they meet something crazy and kooky happens and he learns a lesson. And like that's not really what this sounds like to me. This sounds like you took directors that people know from anime and had them tell a story that is not in any way close to their wheelhouse of storytelling.
But you're saying he can't do it?
I mean, sure he could, but why would he? Like, he barely makes movies already. I don't think this is a movie that's gonna pull him out of retirement and say, "Oh, I gotta tell this story about JFK." He would want to come up with something really groundbreaking, really imaginative, and that really lets him run with his creativity, and not something that's just like a historical drama.
I think there's a lot of significance in the JFK story, though, and I think it would be a cool way to kind of branch out from what he's already done and do something a little bit differently and bring something to a new audience and have a new way of understanding it for like a younger generation per se. So I think it would be, I think you could definitely do it. I think with the voice talent that's out there today, I think it would be, something he could definitely do and he could definitely take on.
And I want to know, too, how much do you get into the conspiracy theory angle? Like, is this like a JFK-style conspiracy thriller, or is it mostly focused on, like, the actual event that happened?
Yeah, there is an emphasis on the conspiracy theory aspect of it, because I think it kind of, that's where, like, you see a little bit of those hints of those fantastical elements. You almost kind of have to have that, because when you look at the original Parkland film, that's the big thing that was missing, is it just kind of told us everything we already kind of knew about JFK. And the whole story behind it, it's just kind of a retelling of that, and it wasn't really anything new. It wasn't anything, that made it stand out. It was just kind of there, and that's ultimately why it kind of fell flat at the awards ceremony that year. So I think, when you add that aspect of it back into it, especially in anime, like in animation, that's really an area where you can really explore with that too. You can really bring it to life in a new way. So I think that's kind of where I would definitely have more to that, but not 100% like straight up, conspiracy thriller. But I would definitely have some of that flavor in there for sure.
I understand that. My point for mine is I get that the people are a little put off by like the tone, I guess, but I think Ava DuVernay is a good fit for that. She did Selma, but she also did like Wrinkle in Time, and she has a pretty good variety of movies. She's even done documentaries. I think she can bring in something serious, some historical event. She did Selma, that was historical drama, and I think she can make it into sort of like a family film. There's not going to be gore, there's not going to be like violence really, there's not going to be like sex scenes or things like that. It's going to be very much aiming for general family audiences, not kids, but like, teenagers, young adults, and the parents trying to have a movie night together.
Right. And see, with The Wrinkle in Time, I wasn't a huge fan of that movie, and I know it wasn't necessarily beloved by critics and audiences either. So I'd be a little concerned about retreading that same ground with that. But I guess that's all I really have.
Yeah, I think I've made my points on mine.
Yeah, I think we got our.
Yeah.
We've heard
I'm still
everything.
torn, so hopefully my judges both pick the same person. I've been starting with Bobby. I'm gonna go with Johnny first.
Yeah, I'll start on this. It's tough because I think both of you touched on something that could be interesting, and then didn't really go through with like all the way that I would have liked to hear it. Tristan's time travel rules were too complicated, and his tone, Daryn was right. He hit on the tone being all over the place. I wrote down my friend Martin with headshots over and over again. I don't need to see a movie made like somewhat for family, but then like they're like, okay, we can perform this surgery. And then you have JFK with half a face come into the hospital and they're trying to do surgery on him. Like, your tone was all over the place. It needed to be a completely adult movie or a family movie with less murder. But every day they're going back, and I'm guessing that they're seeing him get killed over and over again. I don't need to see that. And Daryn, I don't think you used the Studio Ghibli as well as you could have. I would have loved if you just said, it follows a Japanese medical student who comes to America and is working in Parkland the day that this happened, and you follow through more with the impact. We know the impact that JFK's assassination had on the US, but I've never seen anything about it having an impact in other countries, and it obviously did. Japan was the first country in Asia to broadcast the news, and that's what really broke it. It was a huge deal in around the world. If you went with kind of the aspect of this is someone's perception and talking to their family back in Japan, no fantastical elements, make it more like Grave of the Fireflies, I would have been really interested in it, because there's plenty of Studio Ghibli movies that are just dark, or like Only Yesterday is a good love story, no fantastical elements. But overall, I do think Tristan's is just too all over the place, and I at least like the idea of where some of Daryn's ideas went. So I'm going to go with Daryn on this.
All right, Bobby.
Yeah, so this was interesting because, like Johnny said, I feel like both of you touched on some good points, but missed out on kind of the full potential of your pitches. Like Tristan, yours, yeah, the tone is not quite there for me. Like I don't quite understand how it's going to reach out to all those audiences. And I'm not going to go over all the same points that Johnny did, but similar thoughts there. And then Daryn, I think actually the theme and the moral that Tristan had in his movie would fit well in yours, because a lot of Miyazaki's movies are not even really plot driven, and there's very little plot, and it's all emotion and how usually children cope with feelings of loss or loneliness and all that. And that could have done you really well if you focused on kind of how a kid would react to such a major person being killed. But at the same time, I am more interested in a Miyazaki version and seeing another country's take on this event than I am to see this, this president get killed over and over and kind of have the tone that I'm not sure about. So I'm gonna go with Daryn as well.
Yeah, I was leaning towards Daryn a little bit. I kind of agree. Like, it was kind of like, I feel like his didn't have the same negatives that Tristan's has, where his was just like, I don't know, if it just didn't feel fully realized, where Tristan's was more fully realized, but it was realized in a way that I wasn't sure about. Like, I still can't get over Zazie Beetz getting in JFK's car and JFK not just immediately kicking her out of his car. Like, if that happened in the movie, I would be like, no, I don't believe this. But yeah, I feel like if you had done more what Johnny said about like making it about a Japanese medical school student, or if you had made the main character one of JFK's like children, and you kind of did what they did with the movie Jackie, where it's like, hey, we see JFK about JFK as like this huge, like almost mythological figure, but like at the end of the day, like this woman's husband was killed. And if you had focused like this, like child's dad was murdered on national television, and like everyone in the world is talking about that, and you focus on that or something, I felt like it would have been a more, decisive victory. But I'm still, either way, even if I voted for Tristan. Daryn gets the point. So I think that ties us back up at 2-2. But we do have a live comment from, I think, a newer commenter. I don't recognize his name. They said anime is weird for a serious subject. And to that, I would say watch Grave of the Fireflies, because that is maybe the most serious fucking movie you will ever watch in your life.
It's weird for Miyazaki to make it, though. Like, he didn't do Grave of the Fireflies.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Anime.
but it's still an anime movie that if that movie will end your fucking day. Like, if you had plans after that, cancel them, because you're not doing anything after you watch that movie.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, I mean, we have a very narrow mindset on what anime is. Anime is a medium; it's not necessarily a genre. So they cover a lot. There's a lot of different anime there.
There's plenty of tones and everything like that. Yeah, I feel like people just hear animated and think like kid movies, but there's a million things out there.
Yeah, like I'm not letting anyone under like 13 watch Grave of the Fireflies.
No. Yeah.
All right, so Daryn gets the point. Tristan, where are we going next?
I'll go with. I'm conflicted here, but I think I'm going to go with Olympus Has Fallen.
All right, just an American classic.
Yeah, right.
They announced the 4th movie in that series.
Yeah, and they're going to come up with another one.
Yeah, right now the night has fallen. I think.
Night Has Fallen.
Oh, God.
So, yeah.
Like the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight has fallen.
It's Gerard Butler facing Batman.
Yeah. And who's going to
You
go
never
first?
know.
You or Daryn?
Daryn can go first.
All
Okay.
right, so Olympus Has Fallen, 49% on Rotten Tomatoes. Honestly, I don't know. I've never seen any movie in this franchise, so it might be a pretty spot-on rating. It's a 2013 American action thriller film directed by Antoine Fuqua. It is the first installment in the Fallen series. The film stars Gerard Butler, Aaron Eckhart, Morgan Freeman, and Angela Bassett. The plot depicts a North Korean-led guerrilla assault on the White House and focuses on disgraced United States Secret Service agent Mike Banning's effort to rescue the U.S. President Benjamin Asher. And that's
Okay. So, so for this one, I was kind of torn on this one too, but my rule on this one's going to go with martial arts. So for my take on this one, instead of the White House being under attack, I kind of changed it a little bit and have it be the secret location of Spy Kids. This is going to be like a Spy Kids movie. So the same exact plot structure is utilized from Olympus Has Fallen, but kind of with like a different video game skin per se. So like once the base is compromised, Junie's kids, Michelle and Connor, take matters in their own hands and secretly enter the game. They team up with a new friend, Flora, to take down the secret villainous organization known as Kang, which I think was a character from the Olympus Has Fallen film, which is comprised of Carmen's kids and father. So it's kind of this kind of story about the kids of both of Carmen, which is Alexa Pina Vega, and Junie, which is Daryl Sabara. So inspirations, is like Spy Kids, Goonies, and also the CW TV network. Obviously, the age range for this film will be bumped up from like kids to like young teens in a way. So it kind of like follows like, when you saw it when you were a kid, now you're a little bit older. Kind of like what they tried to do with that Dora movie that no one probably ever watched. But so for my cast, I have McKenna Grace from Annabelle Comes Home. She's Michelle. For Connor, I have Noah Jupe from A Quiet Place. For Flora, I have Mia Ketch, Darkest Minds. Obviously, I have Alexa Pina Vega and Daryl Sabara back as Carmen and Junie. Kang leader is Dwayne Johnson, who is also directing this film. I think it'd be a cool way to enter to expand on that for him in his career. And also some of the Kang members, I have Asher Angel from Shazam and Haley Steinfeld from Bumblebee, because I think obviously they're young stars, and I think they would kind of help boost box office and recognition, because obviously they're talented as well. So that's my pitch.
all right. Tristan, what do you got to compete against that?
All right. So for my Olympus Has Fallen, I used Bane in my movie. I made mine like, I know HBO Max is trying to do like the sort of like otherworld kind of DC movies where they take characters but they recast them and don't really worry about continuity. So I'm kind of going with that. So I'm not trying to fit it into the continuity of any of the Batmans. I'm just sort of using the characters and repeating some stuff. So when President Harvey Dent, played by Billy D. Williams, reprising his smaller role from the Batman Returns, he comes to Gotham for a charity event. And when he arrives, the villains of Gotham, the Joker, played by Willem Dafoe, Bane, played by Dave Bautista, the Riddler, played by Neil Patrick Harris, and Penguin, played by Dan Fogler from Fantastic Beasts and a few other movies. They all take over the event and capture the president. But meanwhile, Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle are both undercover at the event, doing sort of recon missions as detectives do. And now they're forced to work together while undercover to rescue this president from capture. So our alt-verse Bruce Wayne is played by Armie Hammer, and the Selina Kyle is played by Tatiana Maslany from Orphan Black. So we get to see Bruce and Selina use sort of their detective skills that we don't get to see that a ton in the movies. So we get to see them sort of sneaking their way around the building, uncovering the plan of the villains, and the whole while making sure they don't reveal their identities because they're out of costume. They're just as themselves at this event. So of course it's Olympus Has Fallen, so there's plenty of action. We have Bruce and Selina have to put on these sort of makeshift costumes. They don't have their costumes there, so they're just kind of using what they have around them at the White House to build costumes for themselves, you know? So maybe they have like some piece of a chair, they break it off and use it as like a shield or something like that. It just gives it sort of like a fun, almost sort of grounded, but not really. Like it's grounded because they're using what's around them, but it's not grounded because it's big and it's Batman and it's kind of fun. So that's what I kind of went for, is they're going, since there's so much action and you want to go sort of like villain by villain and have them defeat these villains, break them down, and ultimately having to fight Bane and the Joker in the last scene while they had the president. So we have a nice final scene where they're trying to fight this guy with all of their accumulated stuff from around the White House, their new costumes that are made out of whatever they can find, and they have to fight these villains while hiding their identities, and ultimately they rescue Harvey Dent. But there is an accident, and we see Harvey Dent gets very injured on his face, so there's sort of like this cliffhanger of like, oh, is he going to become Two-Face in some like future movie? I think even though they're these standalone DC movies, I think they want to have these little maybe setups, you know, sort of like Batman Begins had the Joker card at the end. And even if they didn't do Joker, like it's just a nice callback that Joker's in the universe somewhere. So I think having Harvey Dent set up, maybe he's going to be Two-Face, would be a fun setup, even if they don't follow up with it. And that's my pitch for it.
All right. Johnny, do you got a question for either of them?
My question for Daryn is, in what universe would anyone consider Spy Kids a martial arts movie?
I just think like the fantastical part of it, of being inside that world of that, you know, that virtual reality kind of world. I think there's a lot of that fighting, especially when you think of like that's, I think that's kind of like really popular and really among that demographic. I think we kind of go for that. So I kind of view it as like it's not necessarily like the demographics for like, I would say teens, maybe not like really, really young kids, but still they can still watch it and find enjoyment in it. But it's kind of like for all ages, per se, I guess I should say. So
yeah, but I mean, like specifically, like, are they doing martial arts? That's kind of key, and they don't do that in any of the Spy Kids movies. Yeah,
well, I would envision that. Like that's how I'm pitching it, is like the martial arts within that world, because obviously you have all this craziness in that VR world with like the tech and everything. And I think that would be something that if you made it more along the lines of martial arts and more fighting, I think that would be kind of a fun way to incorporate that. So.
All right. That's all I got.
All right. Bobby, any questions?
My question was really the same vein. It was kind of, if it's a martial arts movie, is it really Spy Kids? And if it's Spy Kids, is it a martial arts movie? Like, how is that going to mesh? I just kind of need that defense, given that you know, even just during the fight. And I understand Tristan's movie. It's a Batman movie. It sounds fun. I'll hear more about it.
For sure. And I think when you have someone like Dwayne Johnson, who used to be a wrestler and whatnot, and have that physicality to him as well, I think a movie that plays to his strengths is obviously something that's going to be key. And I think when you have, I mean, like, I understand what you're saying, like Spy Kids, martial arts isn't necessarily not the first thing you think of, but I think when you go for like a slightly different demographic, I think it would play more to not only Dwayne Johnson's strengths, but I think the strengths of like the people in it. I think when you with the choreography and with kind of exploring, getting more into that VR kind of world, I think you can go more into that aspect of it more and have it be a little bit more. It's supposed to be a fun movie, you know. It's not supposed to be like realistic or anything. So you can definitely explore a lot more of that because obviously, despite kids, that world is not obviously like in real life either. So you can there's room to play with that as well. So,
all right, Joe, you got anything?
No, I think you guys basically hit on everything I had. I was super hyped when I heard Olympus Has Fallen as a martial arts movie, and then Spy Kids was thrown in, and it definitely changed how I pictured this movie. So,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'll just have you guys fight it out and see. So I guess we've talked a little bit of the negatives of Daryn. So Daryn, what are some things you have against Tristan's pitch?
So let me get this straight. Of all the Batman movies that could possibly happen, you come up with one with not only Olympus Has Fallen, but you also, I mean, and I get you're fan casting a lot of those roles, a lot of popular people that are fan casted for those roles, but I just, in no universe would I ever, of all the Batman stories, I want like Batflick's Batman movie that, you know, that we would love to see, or even the Robert Pattinson one that we're getting. There's already so many versions that we're getting of this character, and then to get one that, I don't love the Armie Hammer choice personally, but I understand why people do. But it feels like to me, it's not a movie I would want to watch, especially when they're in the White House and they got to make makeshift costumes. Like what? Like I don't, and I didn't catch who was the director of yours, Tristan.
Oh yeah, the director Chad Stahelski, who did John Wick movies.
Oh sure, I see. Okay, and so I get where you're coming from, but it's not something that appealed to me. So I as a viewer, I would be like, really, like there's, you know, I would honestly rather get the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever, but I just did, of all the Batman stories you can come up with, that just seems kind of really out there. And I understand the HBO Max aspect of it, of trying to pitch an Elseworlds kind of story, but I think we're already getting that with the Snyder Cut. So, and obviously like the Gotham PD. So I don't know if there'd be a need for that. I think it wouldn't be something that might not be well received or wanted, I guess.
Well, I think the point of these sort of like alt versus DC things they want to do is that they can go weird with it, and they can like, oh, here's your chance to like do a fantasy movie one time, you know? Like they're probably not going to get Neil Patrick Harris to be their like forever Riddler, but they could probably get him to come for like there's one movie they can pay him for, you know? And I think this really gets the most of these DC alt verse movies where you can see like, oh sure, Armie Hammer's Batman and he's stuck in the White House. Why not? We don't got to like set up what's his motivation in life. Does he hate Superman? And like you can just throw the characters in and you don't have to worry about like, oh, this is out there, this is weird. Like of course it's out there and weird. That's why you're watching the DC like alt universe movies. You want to see something weird. You want to see something that's not just, oh, his parents get killed and then maybe you skip forward a year or something, and then now he's Batman, he's fighting the Riddler, he's fighting Penguin. Like, we've seen all that before on the streets of Gotham. Like, this takes what we know and puts them in a totally different location and totally different odds, totally different stakes. And I think it would be really fun to see these two characters out of their costumes, you know, having to interact with each other out of their, like, superhero characters more. We never get to see Batman be the detective in these movies. Like there's maybe like one scene where he does like a detective thing, you know, like in The Dark Knight when they had that little heist where he brings a phone in to the building and that gives him like this big view of all the rooms and stuff like that. But that's like what Batman should be doing in some of these movies, doing some detective work on top of the action. Plus, I think building the makeshift costumes off of random stuff is fun. Like when you see these alternate movies, you're like, oh, what are they going to do for like the alternate universe version of the Batman costume? And it could be fun to see them have to like build up a costume out of what's around them and in a way that would hide their identity while still being like practically useful. I think it'd be a really fun movie and get like this one-off fun time with Batman, even if it's not like a Zack Snyder style continuity Batman. It's just something fun to do.
So in your version, there's obviously no Batmobile then, right?
No, they're all in the White House the whole time, pretty much.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Like you'd see the beginning when
part
they get there, but
see, part of the appeal for me of watching a Batman movie is seeing the Batman outfit, seeing the actor who's portraying him, seeing the Batmobile, and being in that world. That's what kind of makes me excited about seeing a Batman movie. And I don't really get that with yours, I guess.
well, you're seeing him as Batman. He's fighting all the Batman villains. He's Bruce Wayne. He's teaming up with Catwoman. He's fighting the Joker. Like, that's pretty Batman, I think. He's literally wearing a costume fighting villains.
No, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just think, especially when you pair it with the guy who directed John Wick, for some reason, I can't wrap my head around it. For whatever reason, it doesn't mesh well for me in my head for the story. I mean, it sounds interesting, but I don't know if it's something that, like with the Joker, I could, like with that movie with Joaquin Phoenix, I could understand going the different route with that one and kind of going more in that artsy kind of style. But I can't picture it with yours.
I like the idea. You know, you have the Joker that goes over to the artsy side, and then you have this as sort of just like a fun action movie side. And I think that's sort of what would be so exciting about these DC movies. They don't have to worry about sticking in the same general genre like the MCU does, where everything kind of ends up feeling the same. So that's my defense of mine. But to move on to yours for just a second, I agree with all the questions here. I don't see how this is a martial arts movie. Like, sir, Dwayne Johnson, that's good casting. I could see him doing a movie like this. But when you go through like all of the other cast members on here, I'm like, well, they're not going to be fighting people. You know, like when I see that you get people from like Stranger Things and they're like, oh, they're going to be in this Spy Kids CW style martial arts movie. And I'm like, well, that's like a million different things smashed into one. So that's my biggest take on yours is that doesn't feel like it's a martial arts movie to me.
All right, I'm ready if you guys are.
Yeah, I have my decision. I'll go first. So I think part of the trap people fall into, I've fallen into it before, is like in a role like cast Bane in your movie is to take Bane and then all of these other DC characters, where I feel like to me the more interesting version of, you know, Olympus Has Fallen with Bane is, I like your director choice, is to have Bane as the villain and then have Keanu Reeves as like a disgraced Secret Service agent who has to take out Bane is more compelling to me than like Batman at the White House. But that's kind of, he's not like dressed as Batman. He doesn't have a Batmobile. However, with Daryn's, it's like a martial arts movie, but it's Spy Kids and then Dwayne Johnson in his directorial debut. It's just a lot of things coming together that I don't know if they come together well. And I feel like a martial arts Olympus Has Fallen where you have like ninjas or just like, you know, just great fighters coming into the White House and these Secret Service agents got to take them out. Sounds like a great movie, but that's not what I heard. And so I feel like this isn't so much for me, Daryn or Tristan winning the pitch. It's more Daryn losing the pitch more. So I'm still going to give Tristan my vote. So Johnny, who has your vote?
Yeah, I agree. I didn't love Tristan's pitch, but I feel like Daryn, as soon as he said martial arts, Olympus Has Fallen, he put himself up on a pedestal, and I was like, it's going to be really hard to lose this. And then he said Spy Kids, and then the pedestal went away, and he's standing on flat ground. And then every single word he said, the rest of his pitch, dug himself into like a 35-foot grave. Everything sounded awful. It was a whitewashed Spy Kids movie. The whole original intent of Spy Kids was kind of to give some diversity. It was a very Spanish movie. I don't need to see Noah Jupe in a Spy Kids movie trying to do martial arts fights, even if it's for kids. And you mentioned the CW. It's fitting because of the lack of diversity. And I don't know, man. That was a really bad pitch. That might no offense, but yeah, when you said martial arts, man, I was real excited. Put Donnie Yen in the White House. All I needed to hear, and you would have won miles and miles away. But your defense of a martial arts movie is Dwayne Johnson, who doesn't do martial arts. That's not a very good defense for me. So I'm gonna go same thing with Joe. Tristan didn't win the pitch. Daryn lost the pitch. I'm gonna go with Tristan.
All right, and then obviously Tristan gets the point. But Bobby, where would your vote have gone?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I texted Johnny partway through this, and I just said, Daryn's losing you with every sentence, isn't he? So yeah, I mean, it's more like you said, it's that Spy Kids thing just didn't quite work out for me. I didn't love Tristan's pitch for Batman. I think it's a little disposable, but yeah, just that mix just didn't work.
All right, so Darren's pick. Darren, where are we going next?
All right, I'm just seeing what we have left.
I think we got, what, 2 movies left?
Yeah, I think it's the campaign and then Team America World Police.
Yep.
Okay.
Be right back.
I'll go Team America World Police.
All right, that's a longer read for me. So, and then who's going first, you or Tristan?
I'll go first.
All right, so Team America World Police came out in 2004. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 77%. It's a comedy film directed by Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Matt Stone and Payne Braley, all of whom are known for the popular animated television series South Park. The film is a satire of big-budget action films and their associated cliches and stereotypes, with particular humorous emphasis on the global implications of politics of the United States. The title is derived from domestic and international political criticisms that foreign policy of the United States frequently and unilaterally tries to police the world. Team America follows the fictional titular paramilitary police force in the recruitment of a Broadway actor in an attempt to save the world from North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il, with leading a conspiracy of Islamic terrorists and liberal Hollywood actors in a bid for global destruction. Instead of live actors, the film uses a style of puppetry. And that is my description for Team America World Police. Darren, what is your pitch?
Okay, so for Team America World Police, the role that I will use is having Bane in my movie. Director, I'm going to have Lord and Miller, and this is going to be a Lego movie style reboot of that movie. So the skeletal plot of the film will remain pretty much intact, but modernized to kind of fit the world we live in today. So North Korea would be replaced with Russia, and the final act of the film will have glorified cameos from Bane, Batman, Superman, Iron Man, and Captain America. The film will poke a lot of fun at cliches and stereotypes of movies, kind of like the characters I mentioned, like superhero movies, Legos, and also the real world with Russia and election interference and all that fun stuff, I guess. So for my cast, I have Seth MacFarlane is kind of like running the show here. He's in a variety of roles. I also have Shameik Moore from Into the Spider-Verse, Molly Ephraim, Last Man Standing, Jason Marsden. He's from the Goofy movie. He does the voice of Max. Jonathan Adams. He's done some DC work, animated DC work. He would be my Bane. I think he has a big, strong voice who can really carry that role. Nicolas Cage as Superman, because why not? Will Arnett as Batman, to carry on with that Lego movie continuity. Chris Evans as Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr. as Captain America, to switch that up to kind of they can poke a lot of fun at each other's characters that way. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So I would, like I said, it'd be kind of like it'd be an animated movie, kind of like in the style of the Lego movie, and that continuity. So that's my pitch.
All right, Tristan, what is your pitch for Team America World Police?
All right, let me pull this up. For my version of Team America World Police, I made it a martial arts movie. My director that I used is Matthew Vaughn. And my cast is this team of badass fighters who were assembled by Ronald Reagan to hunt down Russian cells across the world. And I have Jean-Claude Van Damme, Becky Chan, Donnie Yen, and Lucy Liu. And it's going to go for a similar tone as the original, where it's obviously like a parody, kind of making fun of martial arts movies, but also making fun of America's role as like a world leader, trying to like impose ourselves into everything and destroy our enemies no matter what we can possibly do. Like I said, they're assembled by Ronald Reagan, who I have played by Bruce Campbell. The film's like a globe-trotting martial arts comedy epic. The team tracks down the enemy bases to fight their way through, sort of like the way you would do in martial arts movies. You'd have like these levels they have to work through, but instead of like levels of fighters, it's like each one's like a base of enemies they got to fight, and then when they finish that boss of that area, they get this like long-winded exposition speech where he's like, "Oh, actually, the real villain is over here," and they say, "Okay, we got to team up and do this again." So they go through a couple of these different bases. And they finally reach the ultimate, Gorbachev, who fights them in a giant mech suit. So they're fighting like this giant mech Gorbachev while they're fighting it, he like smashes the Berlin Wall. So he destroys the whole Berlin Wall, and they kind of do this like retroactive history where like, oh, they destroyed the Berlin Wall because they were fighting this mech monster version of Gorbachev. And ultimately they defeat Gorbachev, but they find out the suit he was using was made by the US military and coordinated by Reagan himself. So the big finale is this team of kung fu masters who are sent out on this dastardly mission by the United States government to destroy communism, and now they're realizing the real enemy is the president himself. So they attack the White House, and they get in this big battle fighting Secret Service, fighting everyone along the hallways of the White House, and ultimately having to defeat Reagan in their final battle. So it's sort of like just this big comedy, action comedy, where their final battle is destroying Reagan in the White House, and that's my pitch for it.
All right. Bobby, any questions for either of them?
I mean, I like both these pitches, so it's mostly going to come down to the fight. I think they're pretty fun. I guess just a little clarification for Daryn. So this is going to be like Lego Movie, PG type rating, right? Like it's not going to push the boundaries, like the original.
I would say, yeah, like PG-13. I would say PG-13 probably. Just give myself some breathing room with that.
Yeah, no, I mean that's not really a criticism. I just wanted to kind of understand what you're going for.
For sure.
And is that it for you, Bobby?
Yep.
All right, and Johnny, any questions?
I'm interested in these because Team America World Police is such a hard one to pitch because that movie is so great and it's so unique. I kind of need to know why either of these movies are called Team America World Police. More so for the Team America aspect for both of you. Of yours is all Asian actors, Tristan, and I didn't get the sense of Team America World Police from Daryn. So you guys can just get into that with your fighting, but that's the points I kind of need to hear. Defend why your movie is actually a pitch of a Team America World Police and not just two movies you wanted to make. But that's not really a question for you. Just get into that when you argue. Joe, you got anything for them before they get into it?
No, yeah. So I'll say you guys can start with answering that. Daryn can go first, but this is also just your open argument as well. So
for sure. So with mine, obviously, like I'm leading with it being obviously like a Lego movie, but I think Seth MacFarlane's going to be the big kicker here, obviously, just because of name brand and obviously like Family Guy and whatnot. So I'm really leaning with him. The part where like you really talk about like the Team America World Police being brought in is really where it comes down to I envision it as like the last half of the movie, where that's where I incorporate a lot of those like superhero characters, like, and obviously like Bane being a part of like I envision him being like the Russian. And then also like you have Superman, Batman, Iron Man, Captain America, like those are, and superheroes are such a big part of our culture nowadays anyway, that I kind of envision that as being kind of like a fun way of kind of like bringing all of that together and kind of uniting and in a weird way, but also like poking fun at each other. I think there's a lot of room to explore and have a lot of fun with that. And also with Lord and Miller, I mean, obviously they're good directors. I mean, forget the whole Han Solo thing. Like everything else they've done, with Jump Street and the original Lego movie. You think about Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, they're obviously, really good at what they do, and I think they could have a lot of fun with this. And I think it would be a good movie in terms of the, times we're in right now. So
for me, my defense of this being Team America World Police is that Team America World Police was this like ridiculous movie where it's just so over the top and bizarre and just absurd. And I think I went for like the absurdist of that. Like, they're fighting a mecha Gorbachev at the Berlin Wall. Like that's pretty much something out of like a ridiculous Team America World Police movie. And the last battle is I'm fighting Reagan in the White House. Like that's something that's so ridiculous that I think could be pulled right off of those movies. Almost, and I think what's more American than hiring foreigners to do our dirty work for us? So I think bringing in a bunch of people who are not Americans to be this like squad they send out to the world to do everything for America is sort of in a way meta, while also getting in like these really skilled martial artists who could do the fighting scenes and make them badass while still being ridiculous. Because I think the biggest problem with the previous martial arts movie was that none of the people really felt like they could do martial arts. It didn't really feel like a martial arts movie, and I really went in for the martial arts angle here. I got people who could really fight, people who could really pull off the moves and really look badass doing it. And I brought in the absurdism of the Team America to add to that, just fighting ridiculous enemies and tons of bad guys, and they're all going to have one-liners. They're all going to have, like, this is from America, and they kill somebody and just stuff like that. That feels very much right out of Team America for me, at least.
I could see it. Also, Tristan, will your movie, like the original Team America, have a nod to cats?
Oh, we have to.
Way?
I mean, you got to have maybe like a Taylor Swift cameo or Andrew Lloyd Webber cameo. They're all waiting,
There
this
you go.
Is the movie.
You and your Taylor Swift.
And I think
a
Lego movie that's Team America, World Police is such a bizarre clash of tones. Like, sure, the Lego Batman movie was like a little tiny bit darker than the Lego movie, but when I hear Lego movie, I'm thinking like, oh, I'm bringing my kids to see this, And I don't have kids, but if they were here, they'd be seeing it with me.
I think there's a way we could poke fun at a lot of the things that are that are commonplace, and I think there's a way you can do it where it can be a family movie. And I think, especially considering how hugely successful that franchise is and how good Lord and Miller are in that realm, I think they could definitely pull that off and kind of tie it all together. So.
And I think a lot of what made Team America World Police so ridiculous is how much it satirized American culture and like America's governmental role in global politics. And I don't see that at all in yours, really. So I wanted to ask you how are you tackling like the commentary angle really in this movie while you're still making it a PG-13 like teen kids movie?
Well, I mean, if you look at, I know I didn't necessarily watch the whole thing, but when you think of like the Deadpool Christmas, the weird kind of like Deadpool 2 version of like turning into a Christmas movie, kind of where like he's not allowed to like swear or anything, I'm kind of envisioning it kind of being more along like in that kind of frame, that kind of style. And you have Seth MacFarlane, who obviously has a history of poking fun at stuff and being very self-aware with his comedy. And so I would really lean heavily on that, like Family Guy style kind of, but not so hard R with it, but it being a little more family friendly and poking fun at that too in itself, in a way. I mean, you can, you can envision Deadpool doing the same thing. It's kind of like that. So.
I guess I see that, but I don't know. I'm just not getting a good picture of the tone of this movie, I guess. Like, I guess you could do like a watered down PG-13 like version of this kind of a movie, but I just don't really see it being very good. Like when I hear Seth MacFarlane, but it's PG-13 and it's Lego and he's appealing to kids, I'm like, well, that sounds literally terrible. Like Seth MacFarlane can barely make adult comedy. I don't think you can make a comedy for kids. So that comparison doesn't really fit for me personally. But
okay, I would just say just because it's PG-13 doesn't necessarily mean it's watered down and doesn't necessarily mean it can't be good. I think there is a way you can poke fun at a lot of things. Like you can say, like Fricke, or like you just, you can poke fun at that in itself too. I think there's a way you can make it where you have a good, compelling story at the heart of it, and then that comedy really brings that home. So.
And I also think that the rule was to use Bane, not to have like a cameo of Bane at the end of the movie. And if I'm going to get knocked for including Bane along with the whole cast of DC characters, I think having him as a random cameo in a movie that's not even related to DC is not using Bane.
Well, I mean, the DC characters have been a part of the Lego movies, and also when I think Bane would be really good in the last half of the movie. I envision it more of like the latter half of it. So it wouldn't necessarily be, just a cameo per se. It might not be like the focal character, but I mean, obviously, like that's like part of he's the villain, and I think it also introduces a way to poke a lot of fun with like Batman, Superman, Iron Man, Captain America, and really poke a lot of fun with those characters too in our culture. So
all right, I think we got where we're going. Bobby or Johnny, who gets your vote? What are you thinking?
I don't think either film really captured the spirit of what Team America World Police really is about. I mean, even the title, Team America World Police, it is making fun of America for, going around and doing. They are policing the world. You do what we say. We're the ones that are correct. Tristan hit that pretty well, in some aspects. And Daryn didn't even touch on that. I feel like in his, if his was Seth MacFarlane's character started Team America World Police and wanted to show the world the way America works because America rocks. Everything is awesome, but it's America is awesome. And then he learns from the superhero characters that, there are different cultures and different ways to do things. That would make it more so like Team America World Police. Your movie didn't sound in any way, shape, or form like the original movie in any way whatsoever. And the problem with it is Seth MacFarlane sucks, and you're not going to win me over with Seth MacFarlane. See, I'm with Tristan on that. But my main thing with it is, the other thing is a big corporation like Lego is not going to make a movie like Team America World Police. So even connecting those in the first place was a mistake. Lego is going to make family movies, but they're not going to make politically charged movies, especially attacking America in any capacity. So your movie doesn't really fit together. Tristan's I would go see because it sounds fun. And that's my decision. I'd go with Tristan.
All right, Bobby.
Yeah, so it was interesting because on the initial pitches, I felt that Daryn's was ahead by quite a bit, and I was leaning towards you. And with every argument that you made and then Tristan made, it just kept going towards Tristan's side. Because you kind of went away, you leaned too hard into Seth MacFarlane instead of Lord and Miller, even though they're the directors, which I think was a mistake. And then even just making it PG-13 with a Lego movie, you're kind of mixing tones. I would have rather had a PG movie where they are a kid-friendly way to criticize the government and criticize America in that. So you kind of went
kid-friendly way to criticize the government.
Yeah,
that is what this country needs. It's more, that from an early age. Yeah.
But it's more like you can do it without being blunt about it. And then Lord and Miller are fun. You could have argued that, and I could have bought it. I don't think they're going to make a PG-13 Lego movie. And then Tristan, you answered the Team America part pretty well because I was concerned about that too. So yeah, I think Tristan got my vote.
All right, yeah, my vote really doesn't matter, but I think I would have went with Tristan as well, just because I feel like his movie fit more with what I think of as Team America World Police, and I agree with Johnny if I don't know if a Lego Team America World Police is really fits. I feel like the PG, connecting it with Lego, I think really hindered what your movie could be as far as a Team America type movie of I don't see Lego really criticizing America when they're trying to sell to America. So I think with that, Tristan wins. He takes a 4-2 lead. However, Daryn needs to win on the campaign. Otherwise, Tristan gets a repeated rule advantage the next time Daryn and Tristan play. So I guess for the campaign, Daryn, are you going to go first or is Tristan going to go first?
I can go first, I guess.
All right. Gotta look up the campaign. Oh, the campaign got a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is an American political satire comedy film directed by Jay Roach and stars Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis as two North Carolinians vying for a seat in Congress. That's all I had.
Okay, so the campaign, my rule I'm going to do with this one is the only one I have left, which is teen comedy. For my director, I have Greg Berlanti, known as the popular producer from the CW superhero universe. So I'm going to be keeping kind of like a similar plot, but changing the scenario from high school, change the scenario to high school for senior body president per se. The bizarre, wacky humor is still there, but with a sprinkle of heart and romance to kind of tie the bow on this kind of high school experience of expectations versus reality. And I think Greg Berlanti would be a really fun way of doing that and being the director and kind of not really mixing it up from like the superhero genre, but I mean he's also been responsible for like Riverdale and Julie Adventures of Sabrina. So for Matt Marty Huggins, I have Gaten Matarazzo from Stranger Things. I think he just fits the younger mold of that character so well. For Cam Brady, I have Jace Norman. He's really popular from Henry Danger on Nickelodeon, kind of going for more of that younger audience. For Mitch, I have Karen Brar from Bunked, Disney Channel. For Tim Watley, I have Jerry Trainer from iCarly and Drake and Josh. For the Rose Brady character, the younger version of that character, I have Kiernan Shipka. And then for Mitzi Huggins, I have Isabel Oliver Marcus from This Is Us. For Wade and Glenn, I have Drake Bell and Josh Peck from Drake and Josh. I think that'd be really fun, really cool to bring them back together in a comedic way. And then for Raymond Huggins, I have Phil Morris. Yeah, that is my pitch for the campaign for being a teen comedy.
All right. Tristan, what is your pitch for the campaign?
All right, my pitch for the campaign is also a teen comedy, but I went a little bit different with mine. I also brought in the TV guy. I brought Michael Schur in from Parks and Rec and The Good Place as my writer and director. I think he's a great writer. He's written some of the best comedy on TV, so I would love to see him do something big budget like this on a movie. And mine is about Tom Holland, who plays a frat bro who is trying to be the president of his frat, and things are kind of, he's like, the center of attention. Everyone kind of likes him. Everyone loves him and his frat. And then the president announces that to be inclusive, they're deciding that all the sororities, fraternities of the college have to become co-ed. So now women are joining the frat, and suddenly Tom Holland's like douchebag behavior is not as cool as it used to be. People aren't happy with it, and Zendaya decides that she's going to also pledge the frat and run to be president. So we get this campaign, this drunken college antics campaign between Tom Holland's character and Zendaya's character. And the school principal, I have Ted Danson. He worked with Michael Schur on Good Place. And I have Steve Carell and Kristen Bell, who both worked with him in the past as well, who play Tom Holland's parents. And we see this relationship between the two of them where they're very, very confrontational with each other, and they're always trying to one-up each other, and Tom Holland's trying to act cool and tough, and I think that would be very kind of off tone for him. We're used to seeing him as like a small little Spider-Man guy, so I think it would be fun to see him bulk up and play off type a little bit. I know in an interview for a recent movie he did, he was saying how he's not happy with how much he's pinned down into playing those kind of characters, very, very Peter Parker-esque characters. He wants to take on roles that are outside of that wheelhouse, and I think playing this to be something that he'd love to do. And of course, Zendaya, they have real life chemistry, and she's an amazing, beautiful actress. So I'd like to see them go head to head in this battle for fraternity presidential power. And you'd have a similar arc to my election pitch, I guess, where over the course of this movie they would come together a bit, and she would soften him up a little bit and make him realize you don't got to put up this front of being like a macho asshole all the time. It's okay to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more real. I think that's something that Tom Holland's character could learn from this. Start off at the beginning of just being really competent, really douchey, typical frat bro from a college type guy, and learning from this assertive woman who comes into his life that it's okay to not be that type of guy if you don't want to be. It's okay to be a little emotional, a little bit off of your normal personality. I think that's something people would like to learn. And I think it's something also that would fit into Tom Holland's meta narrative of going into this role. It's not his normal persona. So that's my pitch for a campaign.
All right. Bobby, any questions for either of them?
I think they're pretty straightforward. I'm leaning a certain direction, but I don't necessarily have a question that I need clarified for now. So I just kind of want to see him fight it out.
Any questions?
Yeah, not really. I do like that Daryn actually kind of went and cast more teenagers, or Daryn did, and Tristan, yours is more of a college comedy, and I think that's kind of different than what I picture like a teen comedy. So just kind of defend that a little for me.
Well, I think we do see teen comedies that are outside of like the age range of teenagers, and I think seeing teenagers see people who are slightly older than them in college, teens especially like to have this like glamorized version that college is going to be so much fun and so many parties, and I think you could tap into that market by giving them this fun college party movie with actors and actresses they know and like.
Okay, that's all I got.
Yeah, I don't really have any questions. So we just heard from Tristan Spitz. So Tristan, what don't you like about Daryn's?
I'm not a big fan of using Greg Berlanti in this. I think the CW shows certainly have their like following that's pretty devoted, but they're not like humongous hits really. They're not like critically acclaimed. Most people who watch them that are outside of like the bubble of DC fans think they're pretty bad. And I know a lot of DC fans don't even like them because they take the characters into this like cheesy CW directions, And when I think of Greg Berlanti doing this like teen comedy, I immediately go to like CW comedy that he's done on the CW shows, and that comedy is like almost always bad. It's like really cheesy type comedy, and when I look at his comedy writing, I just don't feel confident that he could pull off like a good comedy movie.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. Obviously, I am not the biggest fan of the TV universe that he has going on with the superhero stuff. But I think, between Riverdale, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, I think he's really branched out into more of that CW aspect. I don't know if he's on the new Nancy Drew show or not. I don't know. But what I will say is I think this would almost suit him better than the superhero universe. And I say that because the superhero universe seems really hindered down and it knows its audience, but I think this would honestly suit Greg Berlanti better. When you team him up with, the young cast like Gaten Matarazzo from Stranger Things, I think that'd be so much fun. Obviously getting that Drake and Josh humor in there as well would be really fun too. I think this would work better for Greg Berlanti, being more of a human aspect, being more of like set in the real world and not so much more like the superhero stuff. I think that would suit him better.
I see that, but I just don't have much to compare it to. Like my writer and director has worked on a lot of direct comedies, like Good Place and Parks and Rec. He worked on The Office, things that are very much comedies first and foremost. So I think translating that comedy to the big screen is a lot easier than taking somebody who's written superhero shows with some comedy in them and saying like, okay, here's a whole comedy for you that's not even in the same genre of your experience. I think it would be hard for him to make that transition. Like, sure, he's done Riverdale and Sabrina, which are like slightly edgier, but they're still very much like CW in style and tone and things like that. I just don't see him breaking out of like the CW feel, And I guess CW has a teen demographic, but they're not particularly good, or they have like niches that watch them, but they're not loved by people,
And I think this would be a cool way to expand upon that. I think Greg Berlanti, knock him for, obviously he's not perfect, but the one thing he's always said is heart and humor. And I think that would be kind of the center of this story. And obviously with the Marty Huggins character, I think when you have someone like from Stranger Things, Gaten, I think you could really tap into that and into that insecurity that he has as a character, and trying to grow from that as well. And that, expectations versus reality and growing as a character. I think that'd be a really fun way to, you can still, there's obviously still going to be those Berlanti-isms, but I think there's a really fun way you could do that and kind of do something different.
I think mine has a good message for teens too, like especially if they're in late high school and they're ready to go to college and they're not sure, how am I going to fit in? Am I going to have to put up this front? Am I going to have to act tough? Am I going to have to act feminine? Am I going to have to act like this or this? And seeing a movie where it's like, oh no, people in college, they don't have to put up these fronts. They can just be themselves. They can just be honest about who they are. And Tom Holland can learn that he doesn't have to put up a tough front. Neither does Zendaya. They can both learn that you don't have to act like someone you're not when you go to college. This is your chance to be yourself and find yourself. And I think that's something that teens, like if you want to go for the teen demographic with this, that's especially how you do it. Like learn a lesson to these kids who are just about to go away for college and they're struggling with their identity and they're coming into adulthood and they're trying to figure out who they want to be and who they are. And I think this is a movie that could teach them how to find themselves and how to be comfortable in their own skin and things like that.
See, to me, it's like, I mean, I kind of go with like what they're saying earlier with how I don't get the necessarily like off the top of my head, like I don't envision it being a comedy the way you originally pitched it. But also it almost kind of sounds like a Spider-Man movie, like it almost sounds like it could be a Spider-Man movie. And I think a lot of people would probably find that because you have those two main characters in it. And I understand you're trying to differ Tom Holland from that, but people are still going to see him as that, especially with her. And I think they won't be able to help themselves but make that comparison. And I think it might be distracting from the movie, I guess.
I think teens love Spider-Man, so I brought those two people in there to appeal to the teen comedy demographic. And I think they would love to see these two actors.
Well, I think everyone loves Spider-Man.
I mean, who doesn't? And
right.
People loved Euphoria. That was a big it was an R-rated teen show almost. Like it had dealt with teen themes, but it was still very serious and adult. They didn't have to make the kids act goofy or something. Like they act like real people. And I wanted to kind of have that here, where they're not afraid to show that young people do stupid stuff, and they do sometimes drink too much, and maybe they do stuff they shouldn't do. But sometimes that's part of being young and finding yourself. And I think Zendaya, especially Euphoria, was able to show that. So I wanted to bring her in because of Euphoria more so than because of Spider-Man.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've heard everything we need to hear, right?
Yeah,
I think
I'm good.
Who wants to
Bobby,
go
you go
first?
Yeah, so it's interesting you both chose TV, producers and showrunners for this. But I do think that Tristan chose the better one to lead this. I feel like Greg Berlanti, he does what he does well, and I did watch a lot of those, Arrow, Flash kind of things for a while. I fell off, a little while ago. I haven't caught up, but I don't think the comedy quite works with him. And then you also cast like Drake and Josh, which with your demographic, even if someone's 20 watching this movie, they would have been 4 when Drake and Josh was out there. So like it's a little bit more nostalgic for like me and like probably most of us here, but not quite the demographic.
When did we get so old?
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, you've aged past Drake and Josh being a teen.
I was like, surely teens watch Drake and Josh.
Yeah, no, I was like, when was Drake and Josh? Because that had to be, it was 2004 is when that started. So, I just think Tristan kind of chose the better thing for a comedy to me, for a teen comedy, even though it's a little bit above like a high school teen comedy. There are a lot of college teen comedies, and I think that works. So I'm going with Tristan.
All right, Johnny, where are you going?
It's tough because there was one defense Daryn could have made to completely crush Tristan's argument. Tristan's saying Greg Berlanti can only do these CW things. How can it translate? Greg Berlanti directed Love, Simon, which was a super critically acclaimed, great comedy teen movie. But Daryn never brought that up once in defense of his directing choice. And I thought when you said Greg Berlanti that was the reason you went with him, and you only used CW stuff to defend him. Greg Berlanti's a good director, and he's already proven that he can do it and not be just like the CW crowd. Love, Simon's a really good movie, and it's a good teen comedy. So I understand the directing choice, but I just wish you actually defended your pick with that. I don't know if it just is something you missed in your research because you haven't seen it, or you just didn't, think of it. But yeah, man, if you could have crushed Tristan's argument so fast with that when he said it can't translate to the big screen. He already showed it can, but I can't really give that to you because you never brought it up. And I like the chemistry of Zendaya and Tom Holland a lot. Zendaya is a queen. She's the best. Then I just finished watching Euphoria over for the second time in like 2 months. That show's amazing. So even though I think you did have a good directing choice, I'd like ideas that you had, Daryn. I think the movie that I would just rather see is what Tristan went with the frat party and stuff like that. So you were real close on that one, and I was kind of torn, but I think that last point is what gave it to me.
All right, yeah, so Tristan officially wins 5-2, but this one would have been a split decision because my thought process was I'm pretty torn 50-50 on which movie appeals to me more, but I think if I was a teen and I was like, these two movies are playing at the same time, I feel like Daryn's movie would appeal to me more because I have more of a connection. I probably more likely watch a lot of the more CW type shows. And I also thought what Johnny did with Love, Simon, but he didn't bring it up, so I can't really consider that. But it's more CW shows that I watch. It stars a lot of people in shows that I watch rather than Michael Schur, who, I'm too young. I don't watch The Office. I don't watch The Good Place. I don't watch Parks and Rec. Tom Holland and Zendaya, like, I know who they are, but I've really only seen them in Spider-Man. Where all these other kids, I've seen them in shows that I watched growing up. So I would have said Daryn, because if I was a teen looking at these two teen comedies, that Darren's would have appealed to me more. But matter.
Also, what was the biggest teen comedy of our generation? Superbad. Like, that was more of what Daryn was going, or what Tristan was going for, and less of no teen comedy isn't like, super bad level hijinks, and that's what I feel like Tristan went with more of. And I think that teen comedy wise, even though I think there were actually more teenagers in Darren's movie, I think Tristan hit like, if I'm 13, I'm sneaking into that R-rated movie and I'm going to see Tristan's movie. I'm not going to go see the family friendly PG-13 comedy.
Yeah, I was thinking movies like Good Boys and stuff like that, where they're not afraid to like push the envelope. And I think teens don't want to see stuff that's like super teeny. They want to see something that pushes the envelope and goes a little edgier. So that's why I went a little harder with mine.
Yep. Johnny and I had the same thought. Yeah, Superbad kind of movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Tristan officially wins. Bobby, what was your favorite pitch of each of theirs, if you can remember?
Yeah, it's hard to think back on them. I say, I mean, to be honest, I actually did really like Tristan's last pitch right there, because it is more like a Superbad type movie, and I thought that would be a lot of fun. But I mean, there were quite a few that were actually kind of split decisions for me during these. It was a lot of like, one premise was better, but someone else's arguments were better. It was pretty fun to judge. So I think there's no real major standout like this was the best one for me.
Yeah. What about
I'd say for me, I think it's tough, because this is only Darren's second time on here. And I feel like some of us, I mean, I was critical on him on like the Spy Kids one, but like that stuff you kind of learn from and you get past. You don't bring in the other time travel show into your pitch. You don't bring in Spy Kids into your pitch. Like, you kind of keep it your movie pitch. You use the rule. You don't bring in other things. But I feel like he was real close on a few of them. And I think Darren's going to be real good the more he plays, because the Studio Ghibli one, I feel like if you tightened up a few loose ends on that, could have been a great pitch. Even your, you had the rule perfect down. The Olympus Has Fallen, as soon as you saw the page, it should have been martial arts movie. And you just went a different direction with it. If you just put Donnie Yen in the White House protecting the president or whatever, that would have won you that point. You were real close on a few. But my favorite pitch, I think, from both of them was the movie that only they want to see. That was a really fun.
Yeah, that's right.
That was a fun round, a fun pitch, and both of you nailed that. The first time people were on here, they put way too big of stars. I think it might have been Joe and Alex.
Yeah, it was me and Alex, and I did Drop Dead Fred with Brad Pitt and Bill Murray, directed by Kevin Smith.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it was like more big star names, and you guys still had some big stars, but it was very like niche in your thing. So that was really good use of rules. That was a tough one. That was the toughest decision of the day for sure, because those were probably my favorite pitches, because you nailed the rule choice so well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure.
Yeah, my favorite pitch of Tristan's was the election from in the 1980s with Michael J. Fox and all that. And then my favorite pitch of Darren's, I think, was the Abraham Lincoln family
Hunter.
The Zack Snyder.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say, because I want to give a shout out, I kind of forgot, because it was the first pitch of the day. Tristan's the post pitch, I thought, was really, really good. I thought that was a movie that I'd love to go see. It was a really interesting story. I love the way you went with it. You completely changed the story from the actual event, but actually kept it true to the original's values and made a movie that, like, if that came out, I'd go see it like tomorrow, because I loved Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I'm going to go see whatever that director has to do the rest of her career, basically, because of that movie.
Yeah,
So I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
I felt like if The Post instead of a movie was like an anthology miniseries, and so like The Post was season 1, like his Charlie Hebdo would be like a perfect season 2, like of just like, hey, it's a similar type story. If you like season 1, you'll like this, but it's a completely different story with similar tones and themes and messages and like that.
Yeah.
And I also
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Darren's Parkland Studio Ghibli pitch a lot. It was just not quite all the way there, but.
Yeah, a few tweaks that would have been really, really good, but that one definitely it was enough to win you the point.
And Tristan, what was your favorite pitch of Darren's?
My favorite of his was definitely the Parkland one. Like I was trying to pick apart just because it wasn't totally put together as an idea, but I think you had all the pieces there, you know. And I think if you just put the glue together a little bit better, it would have been like a kick-ass pitch. Obviously, you still won it, but like you could have. That could have. I was when you started pitching it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be like a banger. And I definitely think that's one that you could, that was really good and had a lot of good ideas and good, especially because I would love to see like another country's take on like an American event. You know, we don't really see that.
Yeah.
We see like a Hollywood studios taking on other countries' events, but we haven't really seen like a Japanese studio taking on one of the biggest events of American history. That would have been really interesting to see.
Yeah.
Daryn, what was your favorite pitch of Tristan's?
Probably Election. I mean, there's a couple of them like that one and like the post where he was pitching it, and I was just thinking to myself like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to win this one, but because it sounded really cool to me too. But I'd probably say Election.
All right.
I thought I was going to lose the campaign because I was like, oh, Greg Berlanti, he's definitely going to mention Love Simon. He has a really good cast. I only have like 3 people on my cast list.
Can't believe I missed that one.
Yeah, that oversight might have cost you on that one.
Because even I forgot about that.
Love Simon's good. And that was the first thing I thought of. I didn't even know Greg Berlanti was the CW guy until you said that. And then I had to double check and I looked him up and I was like, yeah, I know him because he did Love Simon. That's really the only movie he did, but that's a really good teen comedy. So recommendation to Love Simon for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I saw that and completely forgot it was Greg Berlanti because I know him as the Arrow guy. So yeah, if you brought that up, you probably would have won that point.
Yeah, same with the American or Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, where Tristan, we were just keep hammering on, oh, this person's famous, this person's famous, this person's famous, and Tristan never referenced that Darren's lead is Tom Hanks, and
Tom Hanks.
It's like him not.
And Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah,
Tom definitely overstated that.
And so I had to give Daryn the point on that one. But Bobby, any final thoughts? Any recommendations? Anything you want to tell the people?
I mean, I haven't watched a lot new lately. I was showing my wife Firefly and Serenity, the show and then movie for the first time for her, and probably like the third time watching it through for me, and she liked that. And then I'm playing the remake of Link's Awakening on Switch right now, so that's what I'm doing.
All right. Johnny, final thoughts? Anything you want to say to the people before you sign off?
It was good to be back after a week off. I think I have some ideas just for like we did, what we would have done. I have ideas for maybe some more small episodes we can throw in there for weeks that we can't really schedule everybody. Potentially like movie drafts or something like that. But I haven't really talked to anyone about that yet, but I think those we have some ideas to kind of at least give content every week, because during the holiday season, it's going to be hard to schedule, 4 or 5 people for an episode. But my recommendations, I watched this. If you like a movie with a bunch of twists, and it's a foreign film, it's called Forgotten on Netflix. It's really good. I highly recommend that. It's literally just twist after twist after twist. You don't see them coming, and when you do, it's fun to kind of guess what's happening. So that one is really good. And then I've been just playing. Bobby's been playing as Zelda. I've been playing God of War for the past week nonstop. It's so good. I've never played any of them before, and I picked up. It was like $20 to download the 2018 God of War game that came out. So highly recommend that if you like a fun adventure game that's modernized and kind of open world too. So fun game. And that's all I got.
All right, Daryn, any final thoughts? Any recommendations?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Lately, I mean, I just watched Blood of Zeus on Netflix, which I thought was really good. Anime series. I also been watching The Vow. It's a documentary on HBO Max about the whole Nexium
Yeah,
thing.
the Smallville girl, Ellie. What's her name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
House
yeah.
back, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great documentary.
Yeah, so that's what I've been watching lately, and yeah, that's God, I guess so.
All right, Tristan, our winner, 2 and 3, 1 win away from being a 500.
Climbing
fighter,
it back
so
up.
I'm
He's on a
feeling
hot
pretty
streak.
good. You know, 2 wins in a row. Both of them I got a repeater rule on. I'm pretty sure. So I'm feeling like a comeback is coming on. You know, you guys made fun of me being 0 and 3, and now I'm here to rule. You know, I did spend the last week like not sleeping at all, just watching the news. So I've been just recovering for the last couple of days. But I have been watching Queen's Gambit on Netflix. That's a really good miniseries in there, starring Anya Taylor-Joy. She plays like this chess prodigy who also has like a mental illness. So you see sort of like these visions she's having on her meds while also trying to become like a chess master. So I think that's a really fun watch. It's a quick binge. So definitely check that out on Netflix while you're watching something.
all right, yeah. For me, final thoughts. I think both people did a pretty good job. Daryn, I feel like it's just as he gets more experience, will be better. And same. Tristan. Tristan started 0 and 3. Now he's 2 and 3. I definitely see the same thing happening with Daryn. As far as recommendations, it's not anything new, and I haven't watched it in a while. But with Christmas season coming up, I'd recommend the movie Klaus on Netflix. It's an animated Christmas movie. It's pretty good. I'm just saying, if you're tired of
I like
the same,
it. Joe had me watch it. We did a list of movies like for each other that neither of us have, like the other person hasn't seen, and Joe had me watch Klaus. It's very good. I get that recommendation. Really good Christmas movie.
Yeah. I actually have
for
one more too.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just really quick. I forgot. So Jen has been watching The Great with Elle Fanning and Nicholas Hoult on Hulu, and that's actually really good. I'm gonna go back and watch it because I watched like a few episodes with her.
Is that a comedy?
Yes, it is it's a dramedy, I'd say, but it's pretty comedic. And it's about the Russians back. I don't know the exact year, but Elle Fanning gets married to Nicholas Holt's character, who is he's the head of the country, and I don't want to give too much away because I know like the plot kind of is a fun part of the show, but it's a really fun, like raunchy, crazy comedy based on like semi history. It's pretty fun.
All right,
Joe, finish your thoughts,
Klaus,
Mr. Klaus.
It was nominated for Best Animated Picture last year. If you're just tired of the same Christmas movies on rotation, fire up Netflix, turn on Klaus. It's like an hour and a half runtime. You know, Jason Schwartzman, Rashida Jones, J.K. Simmons.
It's a perfect follow-up to Die Hard if you're on your Christmas movie.
When you watch the best
It's a nice family movie. Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, see you next week. I have no idea what the plan is, who's competing, who's judging, nothing. I should probably get on that. So
we'll figure it out.
Probably
watching
pretty
this
soon.
If you're watching this live, enjoy the rest of your night. If you're gonna watch this later, enjoy the rest of your day.